And live on your TV on ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. And our guest this morning will appear on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. So glad you've chosen to start your day and your week with us at Mike and Mike on the day after one of our absolute favorite days of the year. I love Hall of Fame induction ceremonies because I love the notion that people achieve that one moment of immortality. What do we all strive for? And what is everyone in the world's biggest fear? The limitations of ourselves as humans, that it all comes to an end someday. And on some tiny level, those men who stood up there yesterday accepting baseball's highest honor not only receive that, but also receive a touch of immortality, because 100 years from now, and maybe 500 years from now, people will go to Cooperstown, New York, and they will learn about Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux and Frank Thomas and Bobby Cox and Tony La Russa and Joe Torre, and that's about as good as it gets.
You know, yes, could not agree more. I feel this way about all Hall of Fame inductions. We talk about this all the time, because here's the deal. When all these guys were young, when they were in the backyard playing baseball or playing whatever they were doing, no athlete thinks as they're hitting that home run in the backyard, playing little home run derby, or at the park when they're a kid, or catching that ball or throwing that pass or making that basket. They're not thinking, someday I want to be in the Hall of Fame. They're thinking someday I want to be in the Major League Baseball, in the NFL, in the NBA. That's what they're thinking. That's what they're making those plays. That's their goal, is I want to make that. And such a small percentage actually make it from their backyards or those parks to the pros. So then you get to the pros, you get where you want to be, you have that goal to get there. And as I said, growing up to get there, it's not, boy, I want to be in the Hall of Fame someday. It's I want to reach that level. So you reach that level, and then you have all these incredible numbers that we know about that put them in the Hall of Fame, and then comes the good part. And then comes the good part. Then comes the part where they're at the podium, and you don't care about their numbers anymore. Now you get to hear the story. Now you get to hear about them in the backyard taking that swing. Now you get to hear about them throwing a snowball, as you will. Now you get to hear about the people that were important to them that you don't normally hear about. We don't have to hear about wins and ERAs and all that kind of home runs. We don't hear about that. We hear about what got them there. Their goal from the backyard was to get to the majors. It wasn't the Hall of Fame. And then they had Hall of Fame careers, and then we get to go all the way back and find out what got them to the majors and what got them to the Hall of Fame.
And some really beloved people. I mean, this is one of the great Hall of Fame classes of all time.
Great class, absolutely.
Well, when you have three managers the stature of Torre, La Russa, and Cox, the number of games they managed, the legendary figures that they managed, all of the wins, all the championships, Torre winning all those titles, Cox winning all those divisions and not winning those titles, La Russa, who obviously is a larger-than-life figure for so long. When you get the managers in there, you don't usually think of that. When you get the managers, they have great stories. Yeah, managers have better stories than players.
Absolutely right.
Because for every player, he had 1 times the number of seasons he played. Right. Frank Thomas, 15 years. He played 15 seasons. Joe Torre had that many times 25. He was dealing with all 25 of those players, which means 25 guys worth of stories and 25 guys worth of issues. And these guys are in their 60s rather than in their 40s, so they have more perspective anyway. So I love hearing the stories from the managers. But the one word that is more attached to the Baseball Hall of Fame, for better or for worse, in recent memory than any other, is the word steroids. And while that word is sometimes used sort of discreetly in steroid speech, or excuse me, in Hall of Fame speeches. Right, what a Freudian slip that was. In Hall of Fame speeches, Frank Thomas was using it without question yesterday, and you heard a little bit of it in the open, but it's worth hearing again. Here was Frank Thomas and how he finished yesterday.
To all you kids out there, just remember one thing from today. There's no shortcuts to success. Hard work, dedication, commitment. Stay true to who you are. God bless you all, and I thank you.
I covered Frank Thomas at the beginning of his career. I remember when he first came up. I remember him walking out of the dugout. I was a kid covering the White Sox in the old Comiskey Park, and it was late in the season, and there was nobody in the ballpark. And this guy walked out, and I said, who's the linebacker wearing number 35? He was a giant. And that was before anyone had heard the word steroids. Now, there were already steroids in the game.
Sure.
But I didn't know it, and a lot of other people around didn't know it and weren't talking about it. And Frank Thomas has steadfastly maintained from day one that he never used steroids, and I believe him. You know the old expression, he was big when he was little? Frank Thomas was big when
He's
he was
always
little.
been big.
He's
always
just
been
big.
a big guy. He's a big guy. Yeah, so he's not one of those that change as people talk about with Bonds, true or untrue. You know, hat sizes or you jump all those. He was always a big guy.
Frank Thomas walked out of the dugout his first day in the major leagues that size. So he did not get one iota bigger. He never became a much better first baseman either along the way, but he was as good a right-handed hitter as I've ever seen. When I was covering him in the early 90s, now what happened was, and he addressed it, what happened was right at the time of his peak, right at his pinnacle, was when a lot of other guys started juicing to hit home runs. Mm-hmm. And suddenly Frank's power numbers didn't look like what they had looked like before.
Right.
He's hitting 36, 37 home runs with a 312 batting average, walking every time he comes out there. Great batting eye, refused to swing at bad pitches. I mean, a classically great hitter. Numbers like DiMaggio was putting up as a right-handed hitter. And then he became somewhat obscured.
Yeah, he did.
Because of all the steroid guys, and he addressed that before the speech.
I tell people that I'm not the voice that's against steroids. You know, I never took steroids. I was blessed with my size and my strength, and that's what made me special when I came to the big leagues. But my hand-eye coordination has something to do with that, too. Yes, I had the biggest voice because I probably lost more than anybody else in that steroid era. I mean, some more MVPs, bigger contracts, different things like that I deserved I didn't get. But, you know, look at me now. I'm in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. You're rewarded sometimes for doing things right, and I definitely did it the right way.
So there you have it, but I think he'd be remembered differently. I'm glad he got in on the first ballot because he was that good, and sometimes I thought he wasn't going to because his numbers during the basically his best years were the early 90s. But he was still a huge player in the back half of the 90s, and that's when McGuire and Sosa and Bonds were hitting all those home runs.
Those numbers were dwarfing. Dwarf Thomas. So, and, you know, he was blessed with the size and the strength, and that's one of the reasons guys used it so much is they weren't blessed with that size and that strength, and they wanted to try and get that advantage. And as Frank said, you know, I felt I did it the right way, and he passed or things passed him by like MVPs or big contracts because those big numbers, those steroid numbers weren't there. But as he said, look at him. He gave his Hall of Fame induction speech.
And none of those guys are going to.
Right.
So, and even more so or less so after this weekend. We'll get to that in a minute. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today and find out if you could save. Among the players going in, Thomas look, they're all first ballot Hall of Famers. Glavine, first ballot Hall of Famer and worthy of it. Thomas, first ballot Hall of Famer, worthy of it. Greg Maddux, another level, right? Greg Maddux, if there's a tiny little room that is reserved only for the elitist of the elite.
There's rooms in there. There are different rooms in the Hall of Fame. He's in it.
He's in it.
Without a doubt. Yes. I mean, I think all the greats understand they're in one building, but I think even they understand that there could be separate rooms in that building.
And we loved portions of his speech. Let me get you a little bit of that. Where is... here it is. Here's a little bit of Greg Maddux yesterday. We loved a little bit, including that one story about Gene Michael.
Those of us who play this great game and make a living at it are all extremely lucky. To have the long career I did, I never really considered it work because it was so much fun. My first day in the big leagues, starting pitchers were Nolan Ryan and Jamie Moyer. 20 minutes before the game, I was sitting on the bench, and my first manager, Gene Michaels, thought I was the bat boy. The nickname stuck for a few years but faded over time. Billy Connors asked me a question one day. He asked, "Do you ever wonder how good you can be?" Of course, I said no. And he said, "Why don't you go out there and try to find out?" I've been trying to find the answer to that question every day since.
A really nice speech from a very good guy. He's a soft-spoken, somewhat introverted guy. He's another one I covered at the beginning of his career before he went to Atlanta for the big money and became an icon. But he was a very good pitcher in Chicago. Before that, obviously, the 4 straight Cy Youngs in Atlanta.
And the kind of pitcher he was. I mean, we talk about the era of Chicks gigging the long ball. Everybody also loved the power pitcher. The guy that was going to blaze that big guy with the big legs that was going to blaze that fastball by you. That wasn't Maddux. Maddux was going to frustrate the heck out of you, paint those corners, and just get his wins and walk off the field. But that's the way he starts his career. The manager thought he was the bat boy.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about it. As I said, now he got to that level. It was his first game, but before, you think he's thinking about being a Hall of Famer one day? When he's sitting there, I think he's a bat boy. He's telling another guy, no, I don't think about how great I can be. And then it just flows from there.
The other guy you referenced, Billy Connors, great pitching coach. for the Cubs during those years. It says his nickname was the Bat Boy. He went from that to the Professor.
Yeah.
And that worked out well. And, oh, by the way, he's about as good a golfer as anybody this side of John Smoltz is also. Another story that we really liked came from Bobby Cox yesterday.
Gosh. This was great.
Let me find that one. This is the one Golik's talking about. Yeah, this is Bobby Cox talking about his managerial career and a couple of great stories.
I would be remiss if I didn't tell a Glavine and a Maddox story, and it won't take very long. They've heard them before. Tommy Glavine's pitching this game, and as usual, it's tight and late. And I'm looking at the situation. Runners on second and third, 2 outs. At least, that's what I'm seeing. I go out to the mound. I said, hey, Tommy. Chipper comes in, the other infielders. I said, what do you think? Why don't we just walk this guy instead of pitching around him? He said, Skip, that's one of the better ideas you've had in the last month. But where are we going to put him? So I looked at third, looked at second. There's runners there, and I glance over at first. Happens to be a runner there, too. So I said, look, if this gets out to the press tomorrow, each one of you are going to be fined $1,000.
How great is that?
It's a great story.
Thought it was second and third, turned out to be bases loaded. Very, very cool story.
Great. Listen, they're great stories up there, and you know, it was an easy group to enjoy watching yesterday, and it was a day without any controversy, really. I think that there's no debate about those guys that got in. Frank Thomas is the feel-good. He's the opposite of the steroid story. Now it gets a little more interesting with what happens going forward, especially in the wake of the decision that was made at the Hall of Fame this week. But I think that it was great stuff out there yesterday. Joe Torre will have stories from him, and we'll have Joe live later this morning.
Yes, we will.
Joe Torre live, 8:30 Eastern this morning on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance.
You're right. It was a weekend of feel-good stories, of no controversy, of good guys, of guys that we've, from our time to even people even younger than us have seen and know about. This was a quality group going in the Hall of Fame.
I'm looking at some of the early reaction that's coming in here. Hercules Handy tweets at us, if you had to choose one Hall of Fame manager and one pitcher who were elected yesterday to start a team, who would you choose? Well, the pitcher, you take Maddox.
Take Maddox.
No disrespect to Glavine. Glavine would take Maddox.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. If you're Tom Glavine, you're an all-time great.
Yeah.
You're a deserving first-ballot Hall of Famer and a 300-game winner. But I got to believe Tom Glavine would tell you he would take Maddox.
Now, quite honestly, most pitchers would probably say they take themselves.
Well, for one game, maybe. Yeah. But I don't think Tom Glavine would tell you his career was greater than Greg Maddox's.
But to answer this, yes. Is Greg Maddox the pitcher?
How about the manager?
I mean, Joe Torre has the rings. Bobby Cox had a ton of championships but couldn't close the deal. With Torre, though, there are those that say, well, they spent the most money. So they had the supposedly the best players.
And he didn't have as the kind of success when he didn't have the horses that some of the that he had then. Obviously, had a below 500 managerial record when he got to the Yankees in '95. Right. Hence the
That's a tough one.
Joe. I think it's La Russa. I mean, La Russa, I think is considered to be by baseball people from a tactical standpoint. I think he's considered to be the greatest manager of the modern era and maybe the greatest manager of all time. I mean, everywhere he went, they won.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. He was the manager of the Bash Brothers. Now, say what you will about the Bash Brothers with the A's, but, I mean, they won the World Series there. They did lose the World Series in '88, which is the Kirk Gibson home run World Series, and that's a series they were favored to win, supposed to win. But I don't think you hold it against a manager when his team loses a short series. I mean, so to hold it against him that Dennis Eckersley gave up a home run to Kirk Gibson. Now, those are one of those things that was just destiny.
Yeah.
You can't, there's nothing a manager, well, it just was. That's the kind of thing that was just fated to happen. You're going to blame a manager and say that was the wrong thing.
I'm not going to blame the manager. I'm not going to say it's fated to happen, but I'm also not going to blame the manager, for that situation.
Look at all the success they had in St. Louis, winning the championship.
You know what? I think they're right. I think you're right.
I think you go La Russa as the manager, with no disrespect to either of the other two guys.
I think Maddox is the easier choice.
And then of any of the three players, in fact. I mean, Maddox is, as we said, he's the one in the small room.
Of everybody, yes, absolutely.
All right, Mike and Mike. So it was a great day yesterday, and there was also obviously a huge decision that was made at the Hall of Fame that will have great impact on the Hall of Fame going forward. I'm not sure I understand some of the criticism of the decision that I'm reading. We'll try and get to the bottom of that in exactly 1 minute here on Mike and Mike after this word from Nature Box, where I always take a look and see what Golik is enjoying in his Nature Box every morning. And today it is apple pie oat clusters.
Well, today and a lot of days, because that's turning out to be one of my favorites, apple pie and crunchy oatmeal cookie. That's what it tastes like. It's absolutely fantastic. NatureBox, the online store for people who love snacking but care about what they eat. Features over 100 sweet, spicy, savory snacks. No way you'll find any of these in stores. Hit naturebox.com/Mike. Select your snack choices. Drop them into your NatureBox. Your entire family is going to love them, and they ship to you absolutely free. Again, go to naturebox.com/Mike. Enter the promo code Mike to get half off your first NatureBox. So here's what you have. 50% off your first box, and shipping is absolutely always going to be free. But you got to go right now to naturebox.com/Mike.
Another tweet we have here, Polar Bear 420 tweets. Do you think Jeter or Mariano will get a unanimous first ballot?
Well,
ridiculously, no.
No.
They won't.
That's another one of these voting things that go on when you hear reasons for voters and what they do. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to. Should they? Yes. Yes. Will they? Absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, Cal Ripken wasn't a unanimous choice for the Hall of Fame. Others that would seem, how in the world do you not vote for this guy? Tony Gwynn wasn't a unanimous choice for the Hall of Fame. Greg Maddux wasn't a unanimous choice for the Hall of Fame. And the voters will give you two reasons. One, that they'll give you have some people who will say, I'm just not voting for anyone who played in the steroid era. We've had our quarrels with them going. I'm not rehashing that one again. It strikes me as completely ridiculous, but if you're a voter, you have, I guess, a right to vote however you choose.
Vote how you want. Yep.
So they'll make their decision that way. So there's that reason. The other is that there are some who will say, well, Babe Ruth wasn't a unanimous choice, so I don't want anyone else to be a unanimous choice.
If he wasn't, nobody should be.
If Ruth wasn't, if Mays wasn't, then no one should be. All I would say is if I am a voter, how do I, because the voting body is not a body of people that they check with each other. Who's going to do it this year? I don't think. Anyway, you're just a voter yourself. You fill out a ballot. How in the world do you not vote for Mariano Rivera to go to the Hall of Fame? How in the world do you not vote him? His first year of eligibility, his name is on the box. There's a box. Rivera, Mariano. I'm just guessing. I don't know how these ballots look exactly. Let's just say it's that, with a little box next to it. You either check the box or you don't. How in good conscience do you send that back without checking that box?
Because of that. You say, well, Babe Ruth wasn't unanimous, so he's not going to be unanimous.
Well, how do they coordinate that on the year? Because what if enough guys decide I'm not going to do it, he doesn't get in?
That's exactly right. What if so many guys are that guy?
Now, as Jason Stark said to us in defense of the writers, and it's an accurate defense, he said, show me the really egregious mistake that's been made, i.e., show me the time Derek Jeter doesn't get in. Right. Show me the time, you know what, that they aren't unanimous.
I agree.
Is one thing.
They're in the Hall of Fame.
They get in.
They're getting in the Hall of Fame where they deserve to be.
So
that's exactly right.
There's nothing terrible going on.
Right.
Will Mariano Rivera get in on the first ballot? Yes.
Derek Jeter
get the year? Yes.
But they won't be unanimous. And you know what? So that's a minor thing comparatively speaking because they're going to be in the Hall of Fame. But I'm with you. I think it's ridiculous.
And they won't have to wait the way Burt Blyleven, Jim Rice, Bruce Sutter, Duke Snider, Bob Lemon, or Ralph Kiner did, and neither will anyone else ever again. That's the next part of the story. You may have seen this over the weekend, that they changed the rules. They made their first change in rules and eligibility rules for a long time. The Hall of Fame ballot changed on Saturday, cut a player's eligibility from 15 years to 10 years. So as you know right now, you got 15 years. So long as you get a minimum of 5% of the vote, you stay on the ballot for up to 15 years. And ultimately, Burt Blyleven got in on the 14th year, Jim Rice the 15th, Bruce Sutter 13th, Duke Snider 11th, Bob Lemon 12th, and Ralph Kiner 13th. Now, the guys who are in that window now got grandfathered in. Mm-hmm. So Don Mattingly, Alan Trammell, and Lee Smith, who are all between years 11 and 15, will remain eligible. But beyond them, players now will only have 10 years on the ballot. Now, the headline here is that a guy like Mark McGwire, who is now on the ballot for the 8th time, and he's down to 11% of the vote. You need 75 to get in. It gives them fewer years to get in. What it basically means is, to me, the headline is this. The Baseball Writers Association of America turns over constantly, right? It is just a constant change of people because you have some guys who've been around a really long time who retire and new guys come in. Some guy, I don't want to say it this way, but some guys die and whatever it is, and they no longer have the band, and a new group of people. And the thinking on the only way that the steroid guys are going to get into the Hall of Fame is if a breed of younger writers come along who have a different perspective on it than the older guys seem to.
Time was going to be on their side. Time was going to be one of their reasons they may get in.
Well, McGwire don't have that time anymore. It's all over for Mark McGwire. McGwire has 2 more appearances on the ballot. Sosa, Bonds, Clemens, McGwire. What this change probably means is that those guys have less chance, if not no chance, of getting in.
McGwire and Sosa. McGwire was down to 11%. He's got 2 more years instead of 7 more years now, but 2 more years at 11%, it's not going to happen. Quite honestly, Sosa may drop off the ballot. He went from 12.5 to 7.2. Once you go below 5, you're off the ballot. So he may be on his way there. Now, Clemens has been on it twice. And he did drop from 37 to 35, but he's still somewhat up there, but he has to more than double that. But he has, more than a few years left there. But this definitely hurt. I had always said I thought over time that the guys accused in the PED era would get in, just for what you said. Time will just start to move on a little bit with some of the writers, and as they change, with our philosophy change. But this certainly knocks that down. So certainly McGwire, Sosa, cross them off. I think Sosa, you were going to anyway, and quite honestly, the route McGwire's going as well. But, will that be that way for a guy like Clemens, who still has, 7-8 years to go? Where will these, how many of these writers will stay the same?
We're Mike and Mike. We're brought to you by Quicken Loans. Quicken Loans engineered to amaze. I will tell you why I like the change that was made here, coming up next, despite all the criticism. And then we will get to the story that certainly dominated the headlines Friday in our absence and throughout most of the weekend. Our thoughts on the decision made by Roger Goodell on Ray Rice. That and more as we continue getting started on a Monday morning with Mike and Mike. And to me, this is significant that he says he comes from St. Louis, where, of course, Tony La Russa had maybe his greatest success. He writes, how can Tony be inducted into the Hall of Fame when he had the Bash brothers and later Mark McGwire here in St. Louis? But Mark and others are blackballed. Tony was aware, as were the other owners, managers, and Bud Selig. The Hall of Fame is a joke. The baseball writers are a joke. The Hall of Fame is diminished until the all-time hits leader, the all-time home run leader, and the 7-time Cy Young winner are in it. The Hall of Fame is a joke and less important without them.
And very quickly, that would be Pete Rose, that would be Barry Bonds, and that would be Roger Clemens,
right,
all who are leaders there and are not in the Hall of Fame. Listen, I've said it, Greeny has said it. We both think Pete Rose, if you want to make that separate, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. And my opinion has always been, even if you're there's a rumor about you, or even if there were steroids, if you were involved in them, if you had the numbers, I'm putting you in the Hall of Fame, we'll put a note about it. That's how I've been. Tony La Russa is that way. Tony La Russa has said it, including on this show. He has basically said the exact same thing. That's how I would go about it, but I definitely would have Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame as well. So there are some people, Greeny, like that emailer, that was one I had set aside as well, that basically don't care anything about the Hall of Fame until the best players that were on the field, for whatever reason, are in the Hall of Fame.
Well, we have to separate Rose from the others. They're just two different discussions. I am in favor of Pete Rose being in the Hall of Fame, and I would specifically put on his plaque, banned for life from baseball for gambling. And to me, that cleans up the entire situation, or at least it makes the entire situation complete. The steroid thing, I have changed my perspective on. And for those who would say changing your mind is a sign of weakness, I strongly disagree. Changing your mind over the course of time means you are willing to learn. I have changed my thought, having heard from a lot of people and their perspective. There was a time when I said, I don't want any steroid guy anywhere near the Hall of Fame. But here's what I've come to think over the many years that this conversation has been ongoing. That I don't have, neither do you, and neither does or will ever anyone else, exactly what happened in the 90s, the late 80s, the 90s, whenever this was going on, the early 2000s, and to whatever degree it's still going on today. If you could tell me exactly who was using what, when, and what effect it had on the game, then I would be completely in favor of taking the guys who cheated and tossing them to the side. The problem is we don't know that, and we never will. So to not put a guy in, it's totally unfair to a player like, for example, Mike Piazza, who in my opinion would absolutely be in the Hall of Fame now, if not for, let's face it, a case of back knee. People looked at the acne on his back and immediately assumed he must be using steroids. And maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, I don't know. But the point is, when we are as arbitrarily as that, if you were named in Canseco's book, then you were, and if you weren't named in it, then you're not, and all this, when we're as arbitrarily as that, assigning guilt and innocence to people, well, that's not a good way to be making decisions on the Hall of Fame. So I have come around to believing, put the best guys in and just live with it. Accept the fact that the game was skewed for a period of time by this. That's the reality. Nothing is going to change that. Put the best players in. So put Barry Bonds in. Put Barry Bonds in. Put Roger Clemens in. And I would like to debate a few of the other guys, and we'll go from there.
Right, yeah. Listen, I've been that way. And listen, people are going to say, of course, I'm that way because, I admitted using them back in after I had my shoulder operated on in the late 80s to get back quicker. So, people are going to say I'm screwed out. That's fine. Say what you want.
Well, what I would say about that is, for the record, contrary to all of the people out there who suspected, I never did use steroids. So I'm not. I know a lot of people look at me and they say Greeny obviously was a roid guy.
It was rumored. You know what? There were whispers.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I wasn't mentioned in Canseco's book.
But there was one show I saw a pimple on top of your ear, and I thought, he's using.
Yeah, no, listen, you should have seen me in high school. But anyway, I'm sorry, I did not mean to.
No. But I mean, the people are going to just say, listen, you use, so you don't care if you use it. I would have this I would have this opinion anyway. This is. For that reason, you can't really define that era. I would put players in if their numbers say in, and as Bob Costas has said, do something like either at the Hall of Fame, on the wall, or in the history books. However you want to declare whatever time you think was a steroid time, that's fine. That's fine. You want to put it on their plaque. If they were busted or admitted using it, go ahead. That's fine. But I think if you have those numbers, you should be in the Hall of Fame, and then let the history books tell the story. And then I agree with you. Pete Rose is a different topic, but Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
I would put, again, if it were up to me, if I were the Greenberg who was going to succeed Bud Selig as commissioner of baseball instead of Steve Greenberg, who, can you imagine being in a position in your life at any point where you are turning down the job of being the commissioner of Major League Baseball? That's where Steve Greenberg is. Meantime, I'm sitting here, the other Greenberg, and I can't get a call. But anyway, if I were in that seat, I would put Pete Rose in. Now, the change in the voting rules that we talked about a few minutes ago is only the second change they've had in the voting rules since 1985. The first came in 1991. And that was when they made the rule that players on baseball's permanent ineligible list were barred from the ballot.
Right.
That was the decision that has Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame. He's not available to be on the ballot. And I remember there were years where guys, a few writers that I knew, at least one that I knew, Dave Van Dyke in Chicago, put Pete Rose's name on a ballot and sent it in, knowing it was going to invalidate his ballot.
Right.
But he was doing it to make a statement. So guys have made statements, maybe none more loudly than our friend Dan Levitard last year when he gave his ballot to Deadspin.com and let the fans vote. That was a whole other discussion. By the way, they made a change based on that as well. Did you see that this year?
No, because he got banned for what, a year?
He's banned for life.
For life.
He's banned for life. He and Donald Sterling are banned for life. But members of the Baseball Writers Association for 10 consecutive years at any point are eligible to vote. Another change announced Saturday. Eligible voters will be required to complete a registration form and sign a code of conduct, and their names will be made public, but not their individual votes. You're right. Levitard was only kicked out of the Writers Association for a year.
For a year, that's what I was.
And barred from future Hall of Fame votes. So that's what it is. He's never allowed to vote.
He can't vote again.
But he's only kicked out of the Writers Association for a year after he turned over his ballot to the website that blah, blah, blah. But the point is, eligible writers will be required to complete a registration form and sign a code of conduct. Their names will be made public, but not their individual votes. But were their names previously being held secret? I mean, if you wanted to know who the voters were for the Baseball Writers Association of America, could you not know that?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we know some of the people who vote and would have them on, but I don't know if you could physically go somewhere and find out who all the voters are.
Anyone who has been a member of the association for 10 consecutive years gets a vote.
So I imagine we could figure it out pretty easily.
Well, it's not that hard.
No, it's not.
And
hard for me.
I don't know why we'd be keeping that a secret.
I don't know.
One more thing quickly, and maybe it's just me that this would bother. We're Mike and Mike. We're brought to you by Sport Clips. It's client appreciation at Sport Clips. Get a double MVP haircut experience for the price of a single. Hurry, it ends July 31st. Greg Maddux on his plaque. I saw Keith Olbermann tweeted this yesterday, and it puts on there, it's Gregory Allen Maddux, and his name's a nickname, Greg and Mad Dog Maddux.
Right.
It didn't put on there the professor.
The professor or the bat boy?
Or the bat boy.
Yeah.
But it did put on there under his statistics. Now, I don't want to get into a whole grammar discrepancy here.
Oh.
But it says on here, he is the only hurler. I like that they went hurler.
I do like hurler.
With 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, and less than 1,000 walks. Wouldn't it be fewer than 1,000 walks? Would it be less than 1,000 walks or fewer than 1,000 walks? He didn't have less than 1,000 walks. He had fewer than 1,000 walks. That I think is incorrect.
How is it incorrect? They're both less than 1,000.
No, I don't think so. I think in that phrasing, I think you would say fewer
less than 1,000 means less than 1,000.
No, I understand.
Fewer than 1,000 means less than.
No, I understand
1,000.
I understand what it means.
Okay.
I understand if you just put the little, sideways triangle.
Maybe they should have just put the sign.
That's exactly the only one in this way of 3,000. I just think less than is not right. Less than is a. Go ahead. Someone is typing something very slowly over there. I think that's not grammatically correct. I think. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
I think you're an idiot.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think there's no one in the world. Let's put it this way: if it doesn't bother Greg Maddux, there's probably very little reason it should matter to anybody else. But for some reason,
only you. I would like to know if anybody else mentioned that.
Keith Olbermann mentioned it. That's where I saw it. Actually, he retweeted Craig Calcaterra, who wrote "cruel grammar error" on Maddox's plaque. It's fewer, not less. I think, and I think that's right. I think it is supposed to be fewer. Now, is this a very important thing? No, but it is what it is.
But if it is grammatically incorrect, you would think they would check that before
I think it's
they
grammatically
would put it on
incorrect. I think it is grammatically incorrect.
Yeah.
We're going to get to the bottom
I would
of that.
love to have something grammatically incorrect on my
You were
Hall
not
of
going to
Fame
call
plaque.
Judith Mizell, right? She
That's
was
your
my English
English
teacher.
teacher?
Yes. She's the one who taught me if you can't spell separate, you're not up to par. So it's not S-E-P-E-R-A-T-E, it's S-E-P-A-R-A-T-E. Par is in the middle of the word.
I so wish I took today off.
We'll get to the bottom of this and other important matters as we continue on Mike and Mike after this word from Untuckit.com. Everyone knows that when they're wearing a button-down shirt untucked, the length of the shirt is critical. Finding a shirt that looks good untucked has sometimes been difficult to do.
Yep, Untuckit.com, they solve the problem. Made exclusively for men who wear their shirts untucked. Untuckit shirts are designed to fall at the perfect length no matter what your size. So take it from a hockey star and brand ambassador, Brad Richards of the Blackhawks. Visit Untuckit.com. Improve your wardrobe today. Use promo code ESPN for a special 15% discount. The right shirt can make all the difference. Untuckit.com. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're off to a clean start brought to you by Nivea Men, the total men's grooming solution. Visit Nivea Men USA on Facebook. So are we talking mostly this morning about grammar? Probably not. What was everyone else talking about over the weekend? Ray Rice, domestic violence, and all of the subsequent issues that came as a result of that. When either of us were here on Friday, so we didn't get a chance to give our thoughts first and foremost on the decision made by the National Football League and by Roger Goodell to suspend Ray Rice for 2 games at the start of this season. And I think most people would include in that the word only.
Right.
To suspend him for only 2 games. For those who don't know and didn't follow the story, Ray Rice was arrested following a February 15th altercation in New Jersey in which he allegedly struck then-fiancée Janae Palmer. They're now married. Video surfaced online. By now, almost everyone has seen it, of Rice basically dragging her, not basically, in every way, dragging her out of the elevator. The 27-year-old Rice, here was the outcome of that from a legal standpoint. He has been accepted into a diversion program, which upon completion could lead to the charges being expunged. That's where the legal end of this went. And it is possible that that was one of the reasons why there was no greater penalty levied by the NFL in this case. Here's where I fall on this. For Roger Goodell, it's all about the optics. And I've talked about this many times, the danger of being judge, jury, and executioner. When you're the one person making the decision on all of these matters, that each of them is going to be, and fairly so, compared against the other. Mm-hmm. So, when you look at, just throw out there, Josh Gordon is about to be probably suspended for a year for overwhelmingly for use of marijuana. It doesn't matter how many times. The point is, it's the use of marijuana.
Right.
You have guys getting suspended for 4 games and sometimes more for what they say, using a supplement that they didn't go check with the trainer for. All sorts of things like that. And then you have a guy like Ray Rice, who is involved in a case like this, and this becomes only 2 games. That's the optics. Because fairly or unfairly, and in my opinion fairly, these decisions are going to be weighed against each other. So when you look at the Ray Rice decision in a vacuum, in the absence of him being convicted of a crime and the fact that it could be expunged in a vacuum, maybe that's a reasonable punishment. I don't know. But the point is, we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a world where Roger Goodell has made decisions on all these other penalties. And when almost all of them have been more significant as punishments than Rice's for incidents that are obviously far less meaningful, then it looks awful. It just looks awful, and that's where you are today. That's where we were Friday. That's where we were over the weekend, and that's where we are right now. It just looks ridiculous to say Ray Rice, for what he was involved in, has been suspended for fewer games than some of the other guys that have been in trouble in the National Football League. That to me, is the beginning of the discussion.
People pointed to Josh Gordon, and, one of the answers I'll give you is Josh Gordon flunked repeatedly. I mean, no matter what you think about marijuana, and we know a couple of states has already legalized it. No matter what you think about it, it's illegal in the NFL, and Josh Gordon chose to break that over and over and over and over again. So while you're comparing hitting a woman to marijuana use, you have to understand, at least in that, because I'm with you, it is the optics. You have to look at, he did it more than a few times. You look at a guy like, Mathis. I mean, for taking what he says now, and you can debate it, for taking a fertility drug.
His wife just had a baby.
On what its use is for, but he gets 4 games for that. His first offense on that. So let me just say, the one thing the NFL always talks about, what is their line, their credo?
Protect the shield.
Protect the shield. In my eyes, Roger Goodell. And I listen, I like him, get along with him. I think he's done a lot of good. We've had our differences here. I think he dropped the ball on this one. I absolutely think he dropped the ball on this one. This is about hitting a woman. This is about abuse. And to me, there is almost nothing more cowardly in my eyes than a man hitting a woman. You want to involve children, stuff that goes to a separate case. But to me, it's one of the more cowardly acts a man can do. I said it before, and I'll continue to say it. And I know he's going in a diversion program, and I know his wife went in and had a meeting with Roger Goodell before this meeting and said he's never done anything like this before it and will never do anything like this again. And I get all that. But you know what? This is just me. If I were Roger Goodell, I think the words would have been, I appreciate that. I really hope it never happens again. But he's not denying he hit her, correct? He's not denying he hit her.
Well, he's not commenting one way or another.
He's not, but I know Chris Morton has said the tape is ugly that they have.
From the inside of the
From the inside, it's not a pretty picture, okay? And if all that is true, and I would have to imagine that the commissioner has seen the tape. I would imagine they have all that information. And I don't hear anybody denying the fact that he did that. And if he did that, and that was the only time, I don't care. If I were Roger Goodell, I think it was a chance to say, I understand it was your first time, and it better be your only time, but I can't have this, and I will not have this in my league. I will not have my guys hitting women. I don't care if it's the first time or not. So you can go through that program, that's fine, and you can get it expunged. You can never do it again, and you and your wife can live a happy life. But you hit her, you friggin' knocked her out. You're getting more than 2 games. You're getting 4, you're getting 6, you're getting 8. And I hope you never do it again, because then you're in for a bigger world of hurt. I appreciate you wanting to work on this and said it's your only time, but you are getting stepped on hard right now. I think he should have done that. I think it sends a horrible message. He struck a woman. Let's stop this crap, all right? There's too much of it going on. And when you have the chance to step it out a little bit, do it. Just do it. And I don't think they did it there. I don't think Roger Goodell did it there, and I think he should have.
I agree, and I would take it a step farther, actually. We'll continue with this in a moment, where Mike and Mike were brought to you, our Sports Center, by Orkin. Orkin keeps ants, termites, rats, and other pests in the outfield far from your home plate. To catch a pest, you have to think like a pest. Orkin, pest control down to a science. Visit OrkinMan.com today. Further thoughts on this as we continue next. Mike and Mike. All right, we're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. And among our guests this morning, Joe Torre, 8:30 Eastern Time on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline with the Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremonies yesterday. Always a wonderful day, and it was terrific. That's a great class, the class of 2014 with Maddox and Glavine and Frank Thomas and then Cox, La Russa, who am I forgetting? Oh, and Joe Torre, again, who'll join us coming up. An all-time great class. But we're in the middle of talking about the Ray Rice decision that was made by the National Football League, and Golic expressing extremely strong opinions, and I of course, support them completely. And as I said before, your problem, in my opinion, if you're Roger Goodell in this case, is that your name is on all of these decisions now. That's why I've been against this all along. When you're one person who is basically solely making the whole holdup on the HGH testing is because Roger Goodell is holding out that he be the judge, jury, and executioner. At least this is how the Players Association is positioning it. And they want an independent person to be the ultimate arbiter on these kinds of decisions. And as I've said before, I don't want that. I want to make decisions and then let some other fair, arbitrary body decide whether I'm being fair or not. You need checks and balances in life. And that's the point here. Again, it's the optics. I don't believe the National Football League. I don't believe for 1 second that Roger Goodell doesn't take domestic violence seriously. I don't. I don't believe for 1 second that Roger Goodell doesn't think that's an extraordinarily serious issue and that this is something that needs to be dealt with in the most serious possible manner, and it is a problem that needs to be eradicated in any way possible in our society. I don't believe that for a second. But boy, does he leave himself open to make it look like he does, and that's the point here.
And here's the thing. I get your optics thing, but see, and I know a lot of people are going to do that, but I don't do that because the other suspensions we're talking about are in the CBA. They're in stone. You know, Robert Mathis gets popped with an illegal drug and he misses 4 games.
Right.
That's in the books.
Okay.
Josh Gordon flunks how many tests? You miss a year. He's gonna. I have zero. I'm not comparing the two. All I'm saying is in the Ray Rice situation where the punishment is more on Roger Goodell. Those other ones aren't on Roger Goodell. Those other ones Roger Goodell has nothing to do with. Right, he has nothing.
Well, he was involved in them being bargained, but yes.
But Roger, let's look at this realistically. They were bargained by both sides, and the rules were broken by the players, and they're living by the CBA. That has nothing to do with Roger Goodell in this decision. So I'm separating them. I am. I'm saying this situation doesn't have games stipulated with it. First time you hit a woman, it's 2 games. Next time we don't have that.
Right.
We had that for the PEDs, so I'm fine with all of that stuff, so I'm not comparing them. All I'm saying is in this instance, with Ray Rice, I think it wasn't enough.
Well, and I agree with you, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. Is that the bar is set now at 4 games for this and 8 games for that. And if 4 games for this, then the Ray Rice thing has to be more than that.
Well,
it just
right.
has to.
That's
Otherwise,
right
you leave yourself open to people saying, well, you take domestic violence less seriously than you take, using, a fertility drug because your wife can't get pregnant. That's the point. And no, again, I would never sit here and say Roger Goodell does not take domestic violence seriously. I don't believe that, knowing him as a human being. I don't believe that he does not think this is an extraordinarily serious issue in our society, that it is, in fact, much more serious than whether someone is using a fertility drug to get pregnant. But the point is, when that's the bar, and you come in at 2 games on Ray Rice, you leave yourself wide open to that criticism, and that's the point. And I'll give you another analogy. Another example to use, and again, we can use Roger Goodell's own words against him. It's the case of Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor, you'll recall, was suspended 5 games in college, basically for selling a bunch of his own stuff. He got free tattoos, and he sold his gold pants and whatever else it was in exchange for stuff. I mean, comparatively nothing, right? It's against the NCAA rules. I don't even want to get involved in that discussion now, but it was against the rules. Right. But it hurt no one. He hurt no one. He was suspended 5 games. He then decided to go into the NFL draft because he wasn't going to stay in college and be suspended 5 games. The NFL made a decision to uphold that 5-game suspension. And Roger Goodell in a news release said, I believe it is a fair conclusion that he intentionally took steps to ensure he would be declared ineligible for further college play and would be able to enter the NFL via the supplemental draft. Here are the key words. Taken as a whole, I found that this conduct was tantamount to a deliberate manipulation of our eligibility rules in a way that distorts the underlying principles and calls into question the integrity of those rules. So that was what he determined. Now, the 5 games had been set by college.
Right.
But he could have put him for anything.
Right. He upheld it.
He could have. He just upheld it. So the point is, to me, the most significant part of that thing is, if that's 5 games,
right.
How in the world is Ray Rice only 2?
Right.
That's 5.
No, I'm with you.
But Ray Rice is 2. So that's, to me, where you wake up on Friday morning and you say to yourself, certain things are just obviously more important than others. domestic violence obviously is one of the more serious problems that we have. Look, violence is a problem. Violence is not a way we should be, and I hope most people, if not all people, are teaching their kids, violence is not a way to settle a dispute. Now, in the rough, tough, macho world of football, sometimes violence is the way they settle a dispute, and maybe sometimes a combination of a variety of anger issues and not knowing when to turn off that switch leads people to doing terrible things. And I agree with you. A message has to be sent. This will not be tolerated under any circumstances. But now here's your problem. How do you go any further than that?
Well,
Greg Hardy you got to deal with now, right? You got to deal with Greg Hardy of the Carolina. Who, by the way, the only comment he would have on this, a guy who has never seen a microphone he wasn't dying to talk into, is, I hate that I'm being a distraction to my team. Which, on a whole other level, based upon the conversation we had last week, really bothered me.
And he was found guilty for assaulting and threatening his girlfriend in May.
Oh, read the details on that one.
Yeah, you want to read something, read the details.
But now, how do you suspend him for more than 2 games?
Listen, it depends on where you go, because here's, according to David, court went easy. Ray cooperated, admitted, counseled. You get less punishment when you show contrition. Yeah, David, in the courts. Roger Goodell didn't have to do that. He did that in the court to get that charge taken away by going into the diversion program. So in the courts you get something more lenient. That doesn't mean you have to get a more lenient thing in the NFL. That doesn't mean Roger Goodell has to be more lenient. Listen, I'm not saying Josh Gordon shouldn't be suspended for the year. He absolutely should. I'm not saying guys who use PEDs and in the CBA it says you're bumped for 4 games. I'm not saying they shouldn't be popped for 4 games. They should. That was agreed to. I have zero problem. I'm not saying, well, if you only did that, then you can't suspend Josh Gordon for a year. Yeah, you can. Josh Gordon should be suspended for at least a year for the amount of times he's broken the rules of the CBA. My whole issue here is I don't get this. I don't understand, and I hope to hear more. I'd love to talk to Roger Goodell on what the thought process was. I understand Ray Rice and his wife came in, and his wife did go in and had a separate meeting there. You could do all the right things in the world, and hopefully this never happens again. But the bottom line is, from all that we have gathered, you did it. We never heard him. Listen, if he didn't hit his wife, then girlfriend or fiance, he would have stood from the mountaintops and screamed it, okay? Well, let's be honest there. Or he would.
Look, unless she walked into that, there was no evidence that she went into that elevator unconscious. Right. She came out of the elevator.
But for those that are saying, well, we don't know what happened. Well, you know what? He's not doing it. He's not screaming, I never touched her. So something went on in there, and he went through the diversion program, the whole deal to get out. So I'm basing that on that he hit her. And when his wife went in for a separate meeting and said to the commissioner and said, he never has done it before, and he'll never do it again. I mean, what are they talking about? So he did it. So I'll say it again. I don't care that you went into diversion program. You did all the legal things that you needed to do, and I get it. I get it. You would do everything legally you would want to try and do to not go to jail, right? You would go through all the legal maneuvers you could to try and get the best deal you could. I get all that. But then it goes in front of the commissioner. He's not dealing with the courts. We've seen him suspend Ben Roethlisberger for how many games? Ben never got charged.
He was suspended 6, and it was reduced to 4
right.
on, for lack of a better word, good behavior. He did whatever the commission
right.
asked him to do, and it was reduced.
I was stunned. I don't understand it. As I said before, and I'll continue to say, he could sit there and say, Ray, I understand you say you never did it before. I understand you'll never do it again. I understand you're going into a diversion program. But the bottom line is you did what you did. You did it. And we saw the end result as you dragged your then girlfriend, fiance, out of the elevator. I don't know how it's just 2 games. I really, really don't understand it. I really would love to hear more of an explanation. And at this point, we have not. I'm not saying take away any of the other suspensions that have gone down, because I understand all those. Those are in the CBA. I get it. He has the opportunity here. Quite honestly, he has the responsibility, but then the opportunity to say, you know what, for too long, because it's happened, Things that happen on the field are punished more than things that are happening in the real world. DUIs that could kill people, which we saw. Guys getting nailed for DUIs, which could but PEDs, you're going to come down hard for, and I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But you know what? This was a chance to say, you know what? No, you can't hit a woman. And he got 2 games for it.
Here's what I would have done. Now, I can't say I've never been in a position like he's in. So I'm sure there were a lot of factors and a lot of pressures that are involved in this discussion and this decision that I'm not aware of. So I'll acknowledge that ahead of time. I would have suspended him for a year, for sure, and let the union fight me on it. Let the union fight me. Suspend him for a year. You want to make the statement that you're making? Suspend him for a year. Let the union fight me on it. Go ahead. If ultimately it gets, that's my point.
Yeah.
Suspend him for a year. If there's some independent arbitrator, if whoever what was his name, Cheyenne Das, whatever the guy's name was who used to be that in baseball, whoever these guys are, the independent body looks at it and says, that's not fair based on this and this and this, and they reduce it to 8 games or 6 games or even 2 games, that's fine.
I could not agree more.
But in my opinion, suspend him for a year, because then you are truly making the statement. What clearly happened in that elevator, and I don't know if Roger Goodell has seen other video or not. I don't need to see other video. I know what she looks like coming out of that elevator, and no one is denying what happened. To me, I'd suspend him for a year and let the discussion go on. I also would address one other thing. I don't like people referring to what happened here as a bad decision. People make bad decisions all the time. There are a lot of bad decisions that get made all the time. They don't result in people being unconsciously pulled from elevators. So bad decision is one of those phrases we use to purposely diminish the significance of completely unacceptable acts. So at the end of the day, I think we're both saying the same thing in different ways. In my opinion, based upon the precedent, if you have precedent that you yourself have set, Ben Roethlisberger, 6 games reduced to 4. We collectively bargained an agreement where this offense is worth this many games. And this offense, then to me, this is a year. Call me in a year. We'll see how we're doing. And if someone else, if some independent body deems that unfair, okay, I'll live with it. Well, but I've made my decision.
I'm with you. In talking with more than a few people about this over the weekend, because we didn't get a chance to comment on it. That was kind of the prevalent thought. Overpunish. And some wouldn't even think it's overpunish, but go really strict and then say, you know what? And I would have even told them that. I sat there and I tried to put myself into Roger Goodell's situation. I did, Greeny. I was sitting at his desk and I had Ray Rice and his wife in front of me. And saying, I appreciate you saying it never happened before and it's never going to happen again. But you did it. You did it. And I am going to lay down the hammer right now because that is unacceptable. And lay down a big-time number and tell Ray, you are welcome to fight this. You are welcome to go to your union and fight this all you want. I would have, without a doubt, I would have gone further and said, go ahead and fight this, but this is how strongly I feel against it. And we have to bring this up because I heard one of our colleagues say it. I heard Mark Schlereth say it, and I'm getting a lot of people now that are chiming in about this as well, Greeny. And I so don't even want to buy into this at all, that Roger Goodell did this with Ray Rice so that he could give Jim Irsay a lesser suspension. That's what I've heard it. Mark said that was his conspiracy theory that he thought, and I'm hearing a lot of other people saying that as well, as let's see what he gives Jim Irsay now. And giving Ray Rice 2 games, does that mean, he can give Irsay 4 and say, look, I treated Irsay tougher than I did Ray Rice, someone who abused a woman? I so don't want to believe that could be in the mix at all. I truly and honestly do not want to believe that's in the mix. So that's what people are saying. All I am saying is I don't understand how it was only 2 games.
I don't believe it either, but that's what I meant going all the way back to my initial comment about the optics of the situation. Here's one from Dave, writes to us, Greeny, I agree with you on the Ray Rice issue, except in regards to Goodell and domestic violence. His actions show he does not care, period. Any argument against that is negated by his actions. See, again, Dave, I don't agree with you. I know the man and you don't. I do believe he takes this seriously.
I do as well.
I don't believe he doesn't think this is a problem. I don't believe that in a moment where he sits down and you ask him, which is a more serious offense, a crime against, the society in which we live, which is a worse thing to do, this or this, that he doesn't recognize that.
I agree.
But you leave yourself wide open to that sort of criticism here. I don't know how in the world they arrived at this. I really don't. Now, again, that's why I also preface my comments by saying there may be a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes pressures that go on that I don't know anything about.
Right.
And that's why being the sole judge, jury, and executioner of something like this is a bad idea, and I've been saying that for years, if it stands or it doesn't stand. In my opinion, suspend him for a year, let someone else decide if it's right or not. But at least you send the message to any other NFL player, and if it stops one other NFL player from hitting his girlfriend, fiance, wife, etc., then it was worth it anyway, right? Isn't that more important than anything else we're talking about? So send the message. Suspend him for a year. If someone else decides it's unfair, then you live with that. And I don't think it makes you look any the worse. I don't think that the baseball people look any worse because, what's his name, Ryan Braun got around the steroid thing based on the technicality. It makes the people who made that decision look worse. In my opinion, baseball did the right thing. If it got overturned, it got overturned. In this case, the NFL, they went so light on this that for the life of me, I don't understand.
Well, that's the thing. I just can't understand it. And I don't know if we'll ever get an explanation for it. I have to imagine Roger Goodell is going to be asked this, and I agree with you. Roger Goodell, we've known him for years. I've always gotten along well with him, and I don't expect that to change. That doesn't mean I can't disagree. I've disagreed with him about on-field things, and I certainly disagree with him about this, and would love to have a discussion about this. And there is no doubt he has his reasons for this that I hope at some point we will hear. Now, I don't know if it's one of those situations that, discipline stays behind closed doors. That's it. We're not talking about it anymore. I have no idea. But to me, there are some things that deserve to be talked about a little bit. And this may be one of them.
I'm just looking at some of the reaction again. Really interesting thoughts. Dave Burns tweets at us, Richie Incognito bullied a 300-pound man. Who was punished harder? I mean, that's another thing, right? Now, Richie Incognito, as I recall, was suspended by his team.
Yes.
Right? The league has not yet ruled because he's not on a team now, right? But the league can issue a suspension.
I don't know if they can. I don't know if you can double wham him because the team suspended him. I don't know if the league can.
But I believe he was suspended with pay. I think that they are waiting to see if he will.
I don't know.
We can look that up quickly. I believe that the league can still, whenever Incognito signs somewhere, if Incognito signs somewhere, issue some sort of discipline based upon the findings of the study that we all saw, in whatever that was in February when it came out. I'm not 100% sure of that. Either way, he already missed far more games than two. Enrique writes to us, Big Ben got 4 games, there was no tape. John France tweets at us, having a wife is a privilege, playing in the NFL is a privilege, being a role model is a privilege, discipline is a necessity. Chuck Hiller tweets at us, what kind of fine or suspension will the defender get who unleashes a blow to Ray Rice's head or knee when he comes back? That's the point. I mean, you get suspended for one game in the National Football League for hitting another player who's playing in the game, who's also a big, rough, tough football player wearing a helmet and shoulder pads. You get suspended for a game if you do that too many times. This is only twice that. That's my point about the optics of this. You make it look as though you care so little about this because there's no other way to look at it besides comparing it to other decisions.
And then Tracy is giving Roger Goodell the benefit of the doubt, saying, I think it's obvious. Goodell has info that has not been made public yet. Goodell is always tough, so there has to be more info. Now, listen, when Roger Goodell first took over, he did put his foot down hard. And at first, I think everybody enjoyed it, but then after a while, some of the players said, okay, now I think it's getting a little tough. But he did come out strong. So I think that's why this surprises people that he didn't hear. So, listen, I'm basing this only on the fact of everything I heard is that he did hit her, to the fact that he didn't deny it at all, to the tape that even our own Chris Mortensen said he heard. I can't remember if he said he saw it or heard from people that how ugly it was of what happened in that elevator. I hope there is. Tracy, I hope nothing more than for you to be right. And there to be something that we're missing here, that Roger Goodell has some information that we don't have. I hope we find out. I'd love to know it. I hope that's true. But until I hear that, until I hear the reasons, I will say for domestic abuse, you hit a woman, you got 2 games, that ain't enough.
All right, here was the decision on Incognito. He was penalized 8 games by the team, 2 of them unpaid. Remember, they sort of negotiated an agreement where he would get paid and he would walk away. Under Article 46, Section 4, Title 1 penalty, the commission or a club will not both discipline a player for the same act or conduct. However, I was just a story that they were scrolling through quickly suggests that they could, if the league wanted to suspend Incognito further, they could say that the initial suspension was only for his treatment of Martin, and that other things came to light in the extended report, and that they could still make a decision if they want to suspend Incognito going forward. Either way, he hasn't signed with the team yet, so they don't have to make that decision yet. And that isn't the point, except that it does become the point. Going back all the way again to the beginning of the conversation, the optics of it are Richie Incognito is bullying big, rough, tough football players and getting suspended 4 times as long as Ray Rice. That's the problem with this. You leave yourself open to the charge, which you're reading everywhere, that the National Football League doesn't take domestic violence seriously. And while I do not believe that Roger Goodell personally does not take domestic violence seriously, I cannot argue on behalf of him or the league, because this was a decision that leaves them wide open and vulnerable to exactly that accusation.
And I always get this because I have boys that play, and I get it. I'd like to know what you do if this was one of your kids. Well, I can go back to something my father told me as I was growing up, became a teenager, becoming an older teenager, and talking about if you ever end up in jail, for a night. Mm-hmm. My father always said, you may just want to stay in jail. You'll be safer there. That would be, I can't imagine my boys ever doing anything like this. And if they did, Roger Goodell would be their least worry. That would be the least of their worries. And whatever he wanted to crack them for, he could crack them for, but that would be nothing compared to what would go on back at home.
We are Mike and Mike reminding you not to miss SportsCenter's NFL training camp coverage. All 32 teams in 10 days. Today, SportsCenter live at training camp with the Colts, the Chiefs, the Panthers, the Dolphins, and the Chargers. So jam-packed with a ton of football conversation on SportsCenter and here on Mike and Mike. Now a word from AutoZone. Have you ever had a no start on a scorching hot summer day? Of course, we're talking about your car.
Yep, AutoZone says you can be stranded on a hot day if your battery is more than 4 years old. AutoZone will test your battery for free. If it's not up to specs, you can replace it with a proven tough Duralast battery. Ruggedly dependable Duralast batteries are engineered to withstand heat, and they're available only at AutoZone. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Back in a moment, Mike and Mike. Next month.
So, there are more and more people thinking that. I do not want to believe that. And then another, we're getting more of this, too, is, well, what would you do if a woman was beating the heck out of you, which is what she was obviously doing in that elevator. I'm sorry. I just can't go down that road. So you're telling me, and Ray Rice, last I checked, pretty big guy? Of
course.
I mean,
a football player.
Pretty big guy? You're telling me the only way to control, even a woman is to punch her, is to hit her, to knock her out, not to hold her, and do something different that isn't hitting her? I mean, I know someone was holding what's her name back, Beyonce's sister.
Oh, Solange.
Did you see Jay-Z throw any punches as he was getting kicked or slapped at? See him doing anything like that? Now, I know a guy was holding her back as well. You telling me Ray Rice couldn't have done that? I don't want to hear that. I'm hearing too many people make it she was obviously hitting him, so he was just defending himself. That's a bunch of garbage that I don't want to hear at all, especially in a guy like Ray Rice's situation. You seen Ray Rice? You seen his wife? Really? Now all of a sudden, that's what I'm starting to get. Well, what if she came at him with a bat? She didn't come at him with a bat, all right? Let's stop making things up. Even if she came after him, he's in an elevator, closed area. You're really telling me he couldn't just hold on to her, that he couldn't control her that way? Is that what you're telling me? And you can say, well, you weren't there. I know. Neither were you. Neither were you. Those two were. And maybe we don't know everything because, as one of the tweets did say, maybe Roger Goodell has information we don't have. Could that be true? Yes, it could be true of why it's 2 games. And there are those that are saying, Greeny, that Ben Roethlisberger got 4 games and what he did was more egregious so maybe it was a tone setter, is that the wrong term, a precedent setter by Roger Goodell. 4 games for what he was accused of doing, and Ray Rice, if you think that was what Ray did was less than what Ben did, Ray got 2 games for it. If you want to start comparing and using precedent or for egregious actions.
Going back to the previous thought quickly about whether she was hitting him first. It is worth pointing out domestic violence comes in a variety of forms.
Yes.
It certainly does come in abuse of the opposite of what we traditionally think of. A woman can commit a domestic violent act against a man. That happens. That should be treated seriously. No one is suggesting otherwise. To suggest otherwise is to be ridiculous. The much more common side of it, of course, is the side that we're talking about here. And just common sense alone dictates, when you look at Ray Rice, who's a 200-pound football player, and a woman who's much smaller, that what we're looking at here is obviously not that. So, look, this is a serious issue. It's a serious topic. It should not be dealt with lightly. There is room for a variety of opinion. And we're just giving you ours. And that is that when you look at the bigger picture, the broader scope of the way problems are traditionally handled and have previously been adjudicated in the National Football League, the statement that is made by the suspension of Ray Rice, to me, is not nearly strong enough. That's basically, in a nutshell, to summarize my position.
And many are saying you guys have no idea what happened in the elevator. You're right, we don't. But we have many people that we know that have seen the tape that talk about how ugly it is, how ugly the tape is. And again, is anybody trying to tell me that Ray Rice didn't hit her? If that's the case, why didn't Ray Rice say that? Are you kidding me? If you were accused of hitting your spouse and you didn't do it, would you not be screaming that? I mean, come on, people. There is tape of it. People have seen the tape. People in his own organization have said it's not the prettiest thing in the world when you see it. I mean, come on. What do you need to be? What do you need to see? Or just because we didn't see it, we have plenty of people who saw the tape. You don't know what happened, and you don't know she was knocked out. Really? What did you see? Who was getting dragged out of the elevator? Are you kidding me? I mean, come on. Stop making excuses. God.
Robert Mathis, by the way, we talked about earlier, he and his wife, we mentioned they had a daughter last week. He'll have plenty of time to spend with his new daughter. He's suspended for the first 4 games of the season, which is 2 more than Ray Rice will be suspended for. Anyway, those are our opinions on the subject. Certainly it is one that provokes an enormous amount of passion and emotion on the parts of all people, and you have a right to your opinion, and if you disagree with us, you certainly have every right to disagree with us. Those are our opinions, and I would consider it highly unlikely that our minds are going to be changed. Speaking of something entirely different, there's no way to segue from that into anything. I saw this story, and I really liked it. It was in the Boston Globe on July 26th, so that's 2 days Saturday. And it is about a woman, a person, who has her mind on changing the world a little bit. And I love this story. Her name, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, is Natalie Nakase. It's spelled Nakase, so it could be Nakase or Nakase. I don't know. I apologize, I don't know.
Right.
I'm just going to read you the story. It's written by Gary Washburn. Women on NBA sidelines are no longer abnormal, so it's easy to mistake Natalie Nakase for an assistant trainer or perhaps a strength coach. That wasn't the case at the Las Vegas Summer League. The 34-year-old Clippers assistant video coordinator got bumped up to assistant coach for the team's Summer League entry, a major step in her quest to become the NBA's first female head coach. He writes, that's not a misprint. The 5'2" former UCLA standout wants to stroll the sidelines for her own team, becoming the latest figure to challenge a sports society that has been slow to embrace change, be it based on race, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Women have coached men's teams before, such as Charlotte Bobcats sideline reporter Stephanie Reddy, who was an assistant coach for a developmental league team in the 2000s. Nancy Lieberman coached a developmental league team in 2009. But Nakase is going after the big carrot, one of 30 NBA jobs, fully understanding she will have to overcome several stereotypes and barriers in her quest. Here's the thing. We live in a world that is constantly changing and evolving, and we're now sort of in the middle part of our lives. The portion of human history that we're going to experience, we're kind of in the middle part of it. The beginning part of it was one where you would have laughed at this story.
Yeah.
But you also would have laughed. You and I are old enough to remember when Geraldine Ferraro was on the presidential ticket running for vice president. And that's all anyone ever talked about was the fact that this was a woman on running for vice president. Well, the last time, or two presidential cycles ago, we had a woman who was within eye blink of being the Democratic nominee for president, and we had a woman who was on the ticket on the Republican side. And while Sarah Palin got an enormous amount of attention for a lot of things, the fact that she was a woman was far lower on the list than many others. We live in a world where in our lifetime there will be a woman who will be the president of the United States.
And that may be...
It may be in 2 years, it may not. Yeah. But the point is, it's going to happen.
I agree.
We live in a world where women are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. We live in a world where women have been secretaries of defense and secretaries of state and all sorts of other things. And you've got a daughter and I've got a daughter, and they're being raised in a world where they are being told, and justifiably so, you can be anything you want to be, which was not true perhaps of their mothers and certainly not of their grandmothers. And their great-great-grandmothers didn't even have the right to vote. So that's how these things evolve. There's going to be a woman who is going to be the head coach of an NBA basketball team someday. It's going to happen. Women play basketball. It's going to happen. It will happen in our lifetime. I don't know if it'll be Natalie Nikasi or not. I have to admit, I've never heard her name in my life before I read this story. But I just thought, this is her goal. And she's doing everything she can. She's a video coordinator. 2 current NBA coaches, Frank Vogel and Eric Spoelstra, began their careers that way. She is focused on that goal, and that's her only thing. She says the sideline is like home for her. She's thankful to the Clippers for giving her this opportunity. Her basketball-crazed father encouraged her to pursue the sport. She's doing all the right things. There's no difference between her and Eric Spoelstra or Jeff Van Gundy or anyone else who didn't play, on the highest professional level in their quest to be a head coach. And I loved it. I just read the story. I thought, here's someone who's thinking about changing the world. And again, she may not make it, but someone's going to make it. In our lifetime, that'll happen.
To sit there and say never about anything like that, you just can't do anymore. It's not a matter of if. It is a matter of when.
Particularly in that sport, which women play at such a high level.
Yes, they do.
I mean, there are you could have right now. You're telling me that before the situation she's in now. Oh my goodness, from Tennessee, Pat Summitt. Pat Summitt couldn't have coached the men's team. She probably turned down offers to do it.
Yes.
You have many other women at the highest level.
No, when you say Pat Summitt, not NBA teams. You're saying
college teams. I'm sure.
Yes,
but my point is, if you're coaching a men's college team, that's really just one step away from coaching an NBA team.
Big step.
It may be a big step, but it's a step. So my point is, that's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Question. I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime. I don't know that, but
I think it's likelier in that sport than any of the others. It's not going to happen. It'll happen there much sooner than football.
That I absolutely agree with.
Because women can play basketball at a very high competitive level.
We'll certainly have to see women be assistant coaches for a bit, but I would agree with you. If it's going to happen in a sport, it's going to be that sport.
And that's the point. This woman is the assistant coach just for the summer league.
Right.
And maybe she winds up on the bench, for the regular season, and then you go from there. That's how these things work. They don't happen in a day. They happen in a generation, and maybe this is the generation, and she will be the leader of it that gets that done. Coming up next, is there really any student in one very high-profile student athlete? We'll answer that question after this. Mike and Mike. All right, we are Mike and Mike, changing the topic a little bit here. We use the college is very big on the term student athlete, and it's mockable. It's a mockable term for a variety of reasons. I mean, they're college students and they're athletes, so I understand it. But we all know we have had our fun over the course of time and our legitimate issue over the course of time with the use of the term student athlete. And so I want to make it clear. I had no problem with this whatsoever, but I'll wonder if anyone else does. Marcus Mariota could very well wind up winning the Heisman this year. He's the quarterback at Oregon, and he's considered by most, I think, Mike, to be among the top 3 or 4 players in college football. He doesn't need many more credits to finish his degree. This fall, while he's playing football for the Ducks and trying to lead them to a national championship, have you seen he's taking 2 classes? Have you seen what they are?
Yes, I did.
He's taking golf and yoga. Now, I love golf, and I very much like yoga. I'm not knocking this at all. But you tell me, are either of those working toward a degree? Can you get a degree in which golf and or yoga are included? Well, I only know from my own college experience, I had to take a certain number of this, a certain number of that, then I had a bunch of electives. Right. But, I mean, there were limitations on the electives. I know for sure I couldn't have taken golf and yoga and had that count towards credits toward getting a college degree.
I have no idea. I mean, all I know is you have to take X amount. I thought, like Jake. Jake is going to play his 6th year at Cincinnati.
Right.
Now, Jake already has his degree.
Right.
Jake is graduated from Notre Dame.
Master's or something? Can you work towards a grad? I mean, how does that work?
You could if you want to, or you take classes. But Jake has to take 4. Jake's taking 4 classes. And neither is yoga and neither is golf.
Yoga and golf. My quarrel isn't even necessarily.
Quite honestly, if there were, he'd take them, and I would have no problem with it. I had no problem with was it Leinart?
Which is guitar? Didn't one of them do ballroom dancing?
Ballroom
That's
dancing.
right, it was ballroom.
But you know what? He had his degree. I
get it, but if you're are you really a student if you're taking golf and
if
yoga?
you have put your time in and got your degree, and you're staying longer, and you've got your degree already, take whatever you want.
I guess I agree with that. Again, on principle, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
But are you really a student athlete if you're taking golf and yoga? Do you have to show up at golf? What exactly is the criteria for golf and or yoga as a college class?
I guess I'm wrong, because I had thought if you were a scholarship or if you were an athlete playing, that you had to take X amount of hours. I thought it was 9, maybe it's 12 that you had to take that.
Well, golf takes a long time. Each round of golf is 4 hours. No, I don't. What is golf?
No,
how are you taking classes in golf?
That's what I'm asking.
Are those lessons? Is he taking golf lessons?
At Notre Dame, you had to take phys ed.
Yeah.
And one of the times I took it, I took golf.
See, we didn't have phys ed at Northwestern. I don't know that you could have taken phys ed. I would have taken phys ed if I could have counted. What do you mean phys ed? Were you standing? What did you learn in phys ed?
One time.
Was it like high school, like being in gym in school again?
Basically, there was soccer.
You
there
got
was
a grade
golf,
for that?
I think it was pass-fail, but
But it actually counted towards a degree? That counted as a credit toward a degree?
Yeah.
I don't think we had that when I was in school.
I don't know if they still
have it. If we did,
I'm
really upset at someone for not pointing it out to me.
To me, here, in all seriousness, I thought the rule was you had to take at least 9 or 12 credits to play. Now, that's what I thought. But I'll say this on the other side, and I said it about the ballroom dancing. If you're in line to get your degree, or you have your degree, and you're taking these classes, I have no problem with it, because you've already put in your work to get your degree. So that's fine by me.
The guys just pulled up. Now, these are Oregon State's. I guess the Oregon ones aren't public, but Oregon State puts up the different classes you can take in for the credits. One of them is Power Step Aerobics, advanced high-intensity step workout that includes plyometric jumps and movements. It can be taken for a maximum of 11 credits. Badminton, basketball, mountain biking. There's actually 2 basketballs. One is basketball. The other is basketball competitive. You can get 11 credits for that. You can get 11 credits for taking non-competitive basketball. Hi, I took a non-competitive. What's your major? I majored in non-competitive basketball. And look, I've played a lot of non-competitive basketball. If you watched us in the Celebrity All-Star Game, that would describe us. We were playing non-competitive basketball. Yeah. That was not on my degree in college. I can tell you that right now.
You're right about that.
Greeny has a bachelor's of science. He majored in journalism. He minored in non-competitive basketball. That to me is a very unusual educational method. That's all I'm telling you.
I don't know where he is as far as having his degree already.
Cardio combo. It says only that he doesn't need many more credits to finish his degree. I just got SportsCenter tweeted it. I don't know any more than that.
I find it hard to believe.
Bowling, you can take bowling for 11 credits. Bowling. There's actually bowling 1 and bowling 2.
Well, you got to learn there's the straight ball and the hook. Listen, you're not going right into the hook.
So the first one, bowling 1, fundamentals of the game including etiquette, spot bowling, natural hook and straight ball delivery. Bowling 2, review and refinement of basic fundamentals of bowling.
See that?
We got to review and refine the bowling.
I got Matthew said for physical education, you have a certain number of athletic courses. I took golf, tennis, archery, yoga, and Pilates.
And those counted toward a degree?
Well, it counts as in the context of your phys ed class.
I don't know. These seem to be individual classes. I don't know. One way or another, Mariota is certainly in the comfort zone. Brought to you by Hanes. Tags are annoying, so Hanes got rid of them. Now all Hanes T-shirts and underwear are tagless, making them more comfortable. Hanes, go tagless. He'll be comfortable doing that in child's pose and downward-facing dog and all the other yoga poses that he's taking for college this year. We continue in a moment. Mike and Mike.
To those who still find the taste of 5-Hour Energy a little strong, don't miss the 5-Hour Energy $100,000 Yummification Contest. Mix 5-Hour Energy with your favorite beverage. Name it, shoot it, send us the video. You could win a share of $100,000. The 5-Hour Energy Yummification Contest. It's delicious. No purchase necessary to enter or win. For complete rules and requirements, go to 5houryummification.com. Yummification.
I'm Lex Friedman. I run my own business, so I know from experience hiring new employees can be tough. With so many job boards out there, you need to post your job on all the top job sites to find the best candidates. Now, with ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 50-plus job sites, including Craigslist and social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Listeners of this program can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/Mike. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Mike.
Sometimes Greeny and I, well, how do I say it?
We have our differences.
But one thing we're in harmonious agreement on is breakfast at Subway.
Like my favorite, an egg white with turkey on flatbread loaded with my favorite veggies.
And my favorite, the steak, egg white, and cheese loaded with things like, well, steak and cheese.
So no matter what banter you're hearing between us,
just keep in mind we're seeing eye to eye over 2 delicious Subway breakfast sandwiches made just the way we say.
If you hadn't had one yet, you're missing out.
Subway, build your better breakfast.
Attention homeowners. I'm Jay Farner, president of Quicken Loans. We've told you about HARP in the past. There are so many more of you who could be saving hundreds of dollars every month on your mortgage. It's simple and easy. And for 4 years in a row now, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. To learn more, call 800-QUICKEN.
Visit jdpower.com for award information. Important terms and conditions apply. Calls for cost information. Equal housing lender. Licensed all 50 states and MLS number 3030.
Hey, Greeny, if you could hire a coach with hundreds of wins behind them and could guarantee a championship, would you think twice about hiring them?
That's a no-brainer, Golick.
Exactly. So if you live in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C., hire Frank Prindle and Associates of RE/MAX Allegiance. He guarantees he's going to sell your home at a price and a deadline you agree to, or he's going to buy your home.
See, that's what I'm talking about. When it's crunch time, you want a coach that can find a way to win. Week after week, month after month, Frank attracts buyers locally, nationally, and internationally moving to Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. That's why he sells homes on average for 8% more money, and that's including his luxury listing.
He's a West Pointer, military veteran, and he's sold homes for over 20 years. Plus, if at any point you're not happy, you can fire Frank and pay nothing. But seriously, that's not going to happen.
If you want a for sale sign in your yard, call anyone. If you want a sold sign in your yard, call the only agent Golick and I would call if we were living in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C. Call Frank Prindle right now at 703-399-4538. That's 703-399-4538. Or online at myguaranteesell.com. That's myguaranteesell.com.
And a very good Monday morning to you. Nice to have you aboard with us on training camp today. With you until 11 o'clock in the morning here on ESPN 980 on what is, at least for right now, about as gorgeous of a morning as you're probably going to find. I know gorgeous is not exactly a manly word, but it is beautiful out. Sunshine, nice breeze, and I got my guy John Kime, who's looking a little bit perturbed maybe at my choice of words.
Well, because you're using the word gorgeous, I look up and I'm staring at you. So I have a different word I want to use.
I mean, see, if you were really not a bad guy, and you're a bad guy because I've been working with you for 5+ years, oh, boy, the chicks are in the house. If you were a bad guy, or if you weren't a bad guy, you would have said, that about Pat Malley, but instead you go right.
It's right at you.
You go right to me. You go right to me.
I look up and I got your mug.
That's great. John Kime is the best. ESPN.com, of course. We're with us all the time here on ESPN 980. And back with you for training camp today. We'll be with you today, and then we'll take a break for tomorrow because the Redskins will take a break. And actually, they've already canceled the afternoon walkthrough today, and so the players will get roughly about 24-ish hours off. Jay Gruden said he's not going to have meetings tonight. Let them go, let them have dinner, hopefully let them have fun without too much fun on the town tonight in Richmond. Third straight day of padded practices to come at the bottom of this hour, just past the bottom of this hour, and that's something we didn't see a whole lot of, if that at all. I don't remember before the new CBA in the Mike Shanahan era. Do you remember a time where there was 3 consecutive padded practices?
I'd have to go back and really search my memory for that one. However, what we know is that he was a lot more, I don't know if cautious is the word, certainly had a different approach, more that Bill Walsh 49ers approach where you don't hit a lot in practice. You don't want to do that. And so, yes, it is different.
And is it a good different in your eyes?
I mean, if they end up winning, sure. But I don't want to sit here and make grand judgments based on a different philosophy because a couple of years ago, the Redskins did it a certain way and went 10-6 and won the division. They did the same thing last year, went 3-13. Yep. You talk to players in the past, this is great because it saves our bodies for December. Now they're going to say it's great because it prepares us for the physical play of the NFL. So it's whatever you're in it, they try to find a positive way. I think in the end, if you have guys who make plays, then the strategy can work. It worked for Bill Walsh, terrific. But he had the talent.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I guess that's a more than fair point. You can slice it any way you really want it.
You can't sometimes it's easy to overanalyze things, but I do think, and I think you'll probably agree with this, tackling has been an issue here.
Well, and that's why, yes. and I know you addressed it in your wake-up call, which you do every morning, 3 areas to watch. You can read it now at ESPN.com. That's your first bullet about not only full pads, but they're also going to be in pants, which we've seen Ryan Clark do, and I think Pierre Garçon has been in his white
there were a
uniform
lot of guys
pants.
yesterday
exactly.
who were in them,
but also live drills and some extra bumping. Now, you can't go out and fully tackle.
No.
But you can kind of be rough and bring some guys to the ground. There were a couple of
physical
collisions yesterday, or collisions on Saturday, collisions yesterday, but there was one play that I remember, and it was a stretch zone to the right where guys actually went down, and I think there was a tackle.
There have been some, and I will say there's sometimes, it's great to see those and hear those. However, not everybody's going at the same speed as if it's an NFL game. And so sometimes you see guys doing that and say, okay, I didn't see you do this in a game last year. Let's see when it gets even faster.
Right.
Let's see when everybody's taking that same mindset, because sometimes it might be one guy on that play is like, I'm going to blow somebody up. Well, the other guys aren't in that same mindset. You know what I mean? So there's sometimes where it's a little bit, I think there's some, I hate to say false pops, because these guys are very physical to begin with. But I think there's sometimes where it's like, I'm not sold on some guys doing certain things because I saw them pop somebody out here.
No, absolutely.
But
there
is more.
And you could be trying to show off and make a little bit of a name for yourself, if you will.
But I will say it is there. It's going to be a little bit more physical.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want to instill a mindset. I think that is definitely needed. Listen, I was back in the day when Marty Schottenheimer would have 2 practices a day where it's full out hitting.
Right.
And they would be in pads 2 times a day.
Right.
So, things have changed, but you also, that sort of camp helps develop a certain toughness and mindset. I also think that you have to get players. You have to do a good job bringing in players who already have that mindset and thrive in those kind of situations.
Well, I asked Ryan Clark about that, yesterday, what can you do when you can't exactly – you asked him about coming from Pittsburgh and being able to share some of that, and I thought his point was wise and valid. Hey, because we're already playing some of the we're already playing that scheme. It's not as big of a transition as me coming from the outside from this foreign concept. I asked him about, okay, how do you get better at tackling when you can't exactly tackle and wrap up and all that stuff? And these are the same questions we ask every year, whether it's the regular season, whether it's the preseason, whether it's training camp. And his answer to me essentially was, and it makes sense, and I completely believe in this, you got to get more hats to the ball. You got to get more people running there so that if one guy misses, another guy is there to clean up.
Sure.
If one guy partially gets you around the hip, around the thigh, somebody's there coming from the side crashing in. If you have one hat to the ball, you're in trouble.
Listen, any defense you've ever seen, the defense I played in high school, you're a great runner of the ball, you have a great defense.
Right.
It goes hand in hand. I will say, though, too, I think it starts with bringing in players with a certain mindset. Ryan Clark has a certain mindset. And I think there's a lot of guys in this defense who do, and I think there's some who played last year who did not.
Yep.
So if you don't bring in the guys with the right mindset, you're not going to have the defense with that mindset.
Would one of those guys that did not have that mindset had it for one game last regular season in Denver and didn't have it for any other game?
Yes.
Okay. Just
checking. But seriously though, and I remember talking because I talked to some people about this in the offseason. Okay, everybody says they want a tough defense. Now again, we'll start with the premise that every defense in the NFL is tough. There are various degrees of toughness, and so everybody wants that. Can you just can you mold that? And he's like, you bring in players who have that mindset, and that's where, again, a Ryan Clark, if he can still play, if he has any range at all, if he has that, he can bring some of that. And so if you get more guys like that who have that mindset, then you can do that. And so I think it also starts there, and then you start working, then you hammer home pursuit. Pursuit is huge. Again, it's always huge. Because not every team has missed as many tackles as these guys.
Yeah.
So it's not just about what the CBA does or doesn't allow you to do. These guys were one of the worst in the NFL at that and have been the last couple of years.
Well, just to give you some numbers to put behind that, and I absolutely agree. Again, this is not gospel, but Pro Football Focus had the Redskins at 143 missed tackles last year. Tampa led the league. Another team that had a defensive-minded coach in Greg Schiano, whether they played hard for him or not, and now going to Lovie Smith, led the league with 146 according to that website. So, I mean, whether that's exactly accurate or not, there's different ways to judge missed tackles. But the point is...
if you're judging it all the same...
Right. But the point is that they were very high up there, and it needs to improve. Now, one interesting thing that happened yesterday, you hear Jay Gruden kind of barking at Brandon Merriweather, and we all know about Brandon's history about, getting a 2-practice suspension if he keeps aiming high. That's one thing Brandon got a lot better at. Wouldn't you agree? Down the stretch
he got better at it. He got better. I still think with him you keep your fingers crossed because I think we all know he's one hit away, and that hit with him, I don't trust it. I agree.
There's no reason why you should. But the Redskins averaged, according, again, to those numbers, 9 missed tackles a game last year. And that just can't continue to happen because that's how that stat that you had a couple of weeks ago that you and I kind of did a couple of different posts on about yards per pass attempt. Mm-hmm. The reason why Seattle was number 1 in the league at 5.7 whatever it was, and the reason why the Redskins were horrible at it at 8.04 is because of missed tackling in a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases. And when you watch the Super Bowl, I think that was a perfect example. That was an extreme example of how good they are.
Yes.
But it was, they force you to get the ball out fast, and then they tackle. So these guys, they got the ball out quick, but sometimes there's also too much separation. So it's going to lead to a guy being able to make a better run after the catch and break a tackle or make a guy miss. Because they are the last 2 years for ESPN, we don't, for stats and information, they don't do the missed tackles. Very arbitrary. I think this stat is arbitrary as well, which is yards after contact. Because how do you define? So I think they're all kind of tied together.
Sure.
And they had the most they allowed the most yards after contact, rushing and receiving combined last year. And I know 2 years ago they were bad with that as well.
Yeah.
And over the last several years they've been bad with that. That's why I say you have to bring in players with a certain mindset, and you can't. If you keep having guys who miss tackles, then you're bringing in the wrong guys, or you're not doing something. And I'm not blaming any one person in particular. Right. Because it's an organizational, you set it up, it's an organizational setup here. But then you have to bring in the guys who have a mindset, who are better tacklers, who do their jobs, are in the right spot. And, everybody's going to miss a tackle here and there. Ryan Clark missed tackles last year. I saw it. Okay, he's not going to be perfect with that, but get him down more often than not. Brandon Merriweather has to improve there as well. I think if Keenan Robinson can come up there and show that he can tackle, that will be a big help.
John Keim, ESPN.com. Of course, you hear him all the time here on ESPN 980. With me, Chris Russell, in for training camp today until 11. We're live at the Bon Secours Washington Redskins Training Center down here in the capital of the Commonwealth in beautiful Richmond, Virginia, or at least beautiful on this Monday morning. Nice breeze. Sun is out. If you're heading down, please get here soon. Practice at 8:35. Afternoon walkthrough canceled. Day off tomorrow, so this is your last chance for a couple of days. When we return, the Redskins already shaking up the roster. We'll tell you who, what, and why next on Training Camp Today, ESPN 980. Oh, hi there. Welcome back. It is 8:11 on a Monday morning. Nice to have you aboard with us. Training Camp Today. Live from Richmond, John Keim, ESPN.com, and, of course, all the time with us here on ESPN 980 on a beautiful Monday morning. Nice breeze. Hope it keeps up. Good football weather. Good camp so far for the Redskins. 3rd consecutive day in pads. The full uniform pants will be out for the full squad today. Day off tomorrow. No afternoon walkthrough tomorrow. So we'll get that all covered for you. Coming up later on in the show, one-on-one conversations that I had yesterday with Brian Arakpo and David Amerson. So you will hear from Brian Arakpo and David Amerson one-on-one interviews that I conducted yesterday with those gentlemen, and hopefully we'll have a special guest off the field before 11 o'clock if practice wraps up at about the time it has been wrapping up. So we will get to all of that still to come, but, John Keim, the Redskins didn't make it 4 full days of training camp before they said, we're not messing around, and we're getting rid of somebody that we just don't buy into because for whatever reason he's not buying into us or he's not doing what we want him to do. They axed Brandon Jenkins. I would ask you if you're surprised. I think I know the answer, but I mean, are you surprised at the timing?
Yes, at the timing.
Okay.
Yes, at the timing, because early in the spring, and I'm pretty sure you probably heard this too, that he was not doing well, and he was in big-time trouble. And I know people focus, he would have been a this-round pick or that-round pick. That's all great. That's based on, college you get by on athletic ability.
Right.
You can't just get by on that in the NFL. And he was having some issues with, coaches don't like when you make the same mistake over and over again, and that was an issue.
Right.
Okay, and the details of the game seemed to elude him. But I would say, we had the conversation with Brian Baker at the end of camp, and it seemed like he had finished on an up note. And so you wondered, okay, is he, let's watch the next step, which is training camp.
Right.
And when you're out here, he was getting chewed out all the time.
The time.
I have to do that 53-man projected roster, which initially going into camp had him on the roster. After, now I had to make it yesterday, and I had him off the roster, and then they announced him, so I'm glad that I was able to do that.
Right.
But it's just, so the fact is, no, I'm not surprised, but the timing is always a surprise because he's a young pass rusher who had, again, seemed to be, I wouldn't say developing the way they wanted, but it seemed like he was a guy that he has some ability, but again, the same mistakes over and over again. And it was just, it details.
What was interesting was, you remember the conversation, because I know you wrote it, that you and I had with Brian Baker as the Redskins broke for summer camp. And, we were asking him, okay, we see you're really hard on him. What do you see in him? And he was yes, I'm hard on him because of this, and that made me buy in a little bit more.
Me too.
And I was expecting more, quite honestly, out of Brandon Jenkins.
I'm right there with you, and because if coaches, you have to learn how coaches talk about guys.
Yes.
And when you could tell with Mike Shanahan, if he said a certain thing, he's like, this guy's in. He would say something about Brandon Banks early in camp, he's in.
Yes.
And you could just know based on his comment.
Or you could have a real good feel.
Correct. And Jay Gruden has said things about Santana Moss in the spring. He's going to help us this year. Okay.
I agree.
I'm taking him off that bubble.
Doesn't say that about Aldrick Robinson.
No, he does not. But with Jenkins, so when Brian Baker was raving about Jenkins, okay, he's finishing on a strong note. They do see some ability. We've all seen that. But again, when you're in camp, he did nothing. I didn't see him really do anything that made you say, okay, he's starting to get it. And I actually thought last year in training camp, the first part of camp, he looked better than he did this year.
I agree. He looked much better. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about that. It makes it really hard for, never mind us, but for coaches, I would assume too, but they obviously have more resources than we do and also more knowledge of what they're trying exactly to get them to do. From this standpoint, you mentioned Brandon Jenkins last year during the early part of camp may have, to the common person's eye, may have been the best looking pass rusher.
But he certainly flashed.
Right? Flashed. Then he did nothing in the rank. I even remember against, I think it was Buffalo in the preseason, he had a couple of nice moves. Did nothing in the regular season.
Correct.
So how do you take what we see out here, and even if you're a coach, what you see here or when we get back to Redskins Park, and then reasonably apply it to what they're going to play like when the big boys are playing for real?
I think what you have to do, too, is take how somebody digests the information you're providing them. And when you'd watch Jenkins, and one reason I love watching Brian Baker coach is because these coaches are teachers. I mean, by and large, and so they're going to all the really good ones should focus on the details. Mm-hmm. And when you're watching, and I just point this out, not like Baker's the only one doing that, but he does do it. And when you'd watch him with Jenkins, there was the get off on a step, and the way it affects the angle of your rush, and just how you're reading the blocker, those kind of things. And he just seemed like there was no consistency there. And I think for him, it's like, listen, he's not learning this, and he's not getting this. It's just not going to happen.
Let me ask you this. Was it because he had, I've heard some people, fans, media type, yesterday say, well, because he had no connection to the coach.
That's not it.
That's not it, because Jim Haslett is
here.
He has
a connection. Listen,
I mean,
here's the bottom line.
They just didn't like him.
Correct. He wasn't going to help them. And just because.
And I think this is a good thing.
Yes.
That they said, you know what? We don't care if you're a fifth-round pick a year ago. You're not going to help us. You're not going to play. Why mess around?
Correct. And it doesn't, again, you can, he would have been this round pick. It doesn't matter. If you get here and you're not showing you can help this team, he wasn't helping on special teams. That's a big reason why he was never active last year. And so if you're a linebacker who's not going to help on special teams and you're not getting it over here, and I think you're going to bring this up a little bit, there are other guys who are looking better.
Well,
and so you add that up, it's like he's not going to make your roster. Give him a chance to go somewhere else. And so they, I'm not going to say they did a favor by cutting him, but they did in terms of when they cut him.
Yeah, why don't we get quickly to that, and then we'll take a timeout. The other else is Adrian Robinson.
And
I
Gabe
know
Miller
you were
too,
and Gabe Miller.
But Adrian was good. Yeah.
Adrian was real good yesterday. What have you seen out of Adrian besides yesterday? Has anything else jumped out at you?
Not as much as yesterday.
I know they like his speed, and I like the adjustment he made in one-on-ones. Baker was yelling at him after one drill because of where his launch point was,
Correct.
where he was coming from. Next time through, he made the adjustment, and Baker praised him, and that's something you want to see with coaching.
And I think you see, again, the consistency of how, with that, but also there were a couple times in a row where he was praising him for getting to the right spot.
Yep.
And Baker is a very energetic, excitable, passionate coach.
Oh, yes.
So so when you do something right, he's going to let you know. When you do it wrong, he's going to let. It's not just a drill sergeant out there. He is an excitable guy, one way or the other. And there were a few times yesterday where with Robinson where he did it exactly the way you needed to do it. And again, it's such a fine line to get to your spot and to hold your spot and to have the discipline to hold your spot, even if there's something there. And he was able to do that. So he had, he was beating guys. He was good. So I think you add that combination of, it's like, this guy's not going to make it, gone. And, because this guy, Robinson, I don't know if he'll make it or not, but I think he has to be in the conversation. And this is what we've talked about. This does not mean that Rob Jackson is a lockdown to make the roster.
No, absolutely.
Because I'll be honest, I haven't seen a whole lot of him rushing the passer at all.
And it is amazing how many people, and it's just, I get it all the time. I know you get it. How many people love Rob Jackson because he's made 4 big plays.
He's like the backup quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, he is.
And
he is.
He made those plays.
I like Rob.
He made the plays. You can't take those plays away from him. But here's what I know.
Help him win a division.
Here's what I know. The coaches, they're not. Nobody around the league really wanted him. A couple times. So,
tells you something.
Yeah, and so he's okay, but he is not a lock to make this roster.
I agree. Maurice Hurt was reinstated yesterday. A curious exchange, to say the least, between John Keim and Jay Gruden. We'll play that for you next. You decide what Jay meant out of that. As well, we'll get into the offensive line picture and some studs and duds the remainder of this hour. John Keim, ESPN.com, ESPN 980. I'm Chris Russell. We're live at the Bon Score Washington Redskins Training Center, 828 ESPN 980. We're coming back. Training camp today on ESPN 980. All right, thanks very much to Tim Murray there for the bottom of the RTC Sports Center. Welcome back to Richmond on, again, just what is a splendid Monday morning for football. Redskins hit the practice field, some, of course, in the burgundy-colored jerseys, and some in all white. and the uniform pants and the full pads on. Final practice before the players get to take a little bit of a break. John Keim of ESPN.com is with us. Of course, we always invite you to follow and follow along at John_Keim, at WrestleMania 980. Read John on ESPN.com. He's got his morning wake-up call. He's got his daily practice reports. I put up the weekend practice report on ESPN980.com titled Redskins in Richmond with the numbered practices and just a bunch of my observations, and we're going to get to all of that. But, John, yesterday Maurice Hurt, as Tim just told everybody about, was reinstated from the non-football injury list, and you asked the head coach, Jay Gruden, about this situation. So instead of describing it, I thought we'd play it so that we can kind of let the listeners have a full interactive feel of what Jay Gruden said to answer your question. So here it is, and then we'll get a reaction after that.
Speaking of Mo Hurt, from your perspective, here's a guy who's on the bubble, and he comes in out of shape. I mean, how do you assess a guy like that, and did you debate even giving him another shot?
Well, it wasn't so much that he was out of shape. You know, after further review, he lost some weight in the off season, and we came back for the conditioning test. Something wasn't right, so we just wanted to make sure he was healthy enough to resume practice. He did not finish his conditioning test, but I don't think it was because he was out of shape, because his weight was down. His weight was fine. We don't know. We just took the proper precautions with him. You know, we're very safe nowadays, you know, with all the information we have. So we just want to make sure he was healthy enough and nothing was wrong with him, because it was very out of character for him not to be able to finish. So Larry took the proper precautions, and our doctors took the proper precautions, and he should be good to go.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. It was, your laugh just killed me there.
Out of character.
What,
come on.
I mean, what do you make out of that?
Yeah, that was an odd exchange. And, you know, here's the problem. They're the ones who told us he was out of shape.
That's what I'm saying.
So, and here are a couple things that I know. Coaches say things like that for a reason.
Yes.
Okay. And if it was a matter of him not being in shape, then you should come back right away say, listen, I know we said this.
I made a mistake.
Yeah, but, you know, we saw this. We found there was something a little bit with his knee that wasn't right. We're just being cautious.
They would do that with Shanahan all the time, right? Shanahan would put his foot in his mouth, say something dumb, and then would come back and clarify it, especially injury-related.
Correct. And so I think if it was really the case, then you say that. It sounded like somebody, you know, like, okay, I don't know. I don't know. They never told us what was wrong. You know, it's just some mystery minor ailment. And also, I don't equate losing weight with being in great shape. I mean, as far as being able to run and finish conditioning tests. So, you know, if you can't finish it, then if there's an injury or if there's something there, just say, yes, it was a hamstring. Yes, it was this.
Be more specific.
Be more specific, because really it leaves it open. And I'm not sure that it changed a lot of people's minds what it was. And especially when, you know, the out of character is like, yeah, I don't know about that. But
well, I'm trying to remember now. It was earlier this offseason that Mo was riding the exercise bike. I mean, it feels like I have this perpetual memory of Maurice Hurt always riding the exercise bike at Redskins Park. Was it this offseason or was it last?
Well, it was last offseason. I don't think, you know,
okay,
last
I thought
year
there was a period of time this offseason where he was.
Maybe
and last offseason.
Well, I know it was last offseason
yeah.
and most of the season.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think by the end, Mo Hurt had pedaled all the way to California. So he was on the bike that much.
He was at the Tour de France.
Yeah, I think they gave him the yellow jersey a couple
Tour de
times.
County.
But you know, he had the knee injury last year.
Right.
I mean, in fairness, it
Yes.
wasn't him trying to get in shape. It was him trying to stay with that. But he was riding the bike a lot. So, you know, I don't know.
On your
just thought
roster
there was a
projection right now, you have 10
still
offensive linemen?
10, yeah. And
okay,
I don't
you still
know
don't have him.
Still don't have
no
him.
Reason to.
There's no because they've been working him at right tackle.
Right.
Well, he's very inconsistent.
Yes.
And Compton, I think, is the guy that would go in there. And Morgan Moses is your third-round pick.
Absolutely.
And he's working on the
You
left
have to
side.
keep both of them.
You got to. Yeah, I think you do. And so, it's hard to me. That's one of the harder spots to go right now, and I think the way the roster projections stuff, it's going to change once the games start. Because then you're going to see, well, okay, Josh Laritas has had a good offseason and has started off strong in camp. Will that continue in games?
Right.
Mike McGlynn, I think, has been I've heard, some of the linemen have said good things about him, but I've seen some inconsistency in some of the one-on-ones and all that. How does that translate in games? But he's your backup center. You don't have another backup center. Does Spencer Long go out there and is he a stud? And if that's the case, then do you elevate him to a starting job at right guard or not? I think there's still some questions to be answered there. I don't think that's probably going to be the case, but I think that's one of the more interesting spots to in terms of cuts as we get down to the camp to look at. And because then if you're cutting a guy there and keeping 9, then who's going to get the extra guy?
Yeah, there are some interesting challenges, to say the least, to try and figure out this piece of the puzzle. And I guess initially in the offseason, or after they drafted Morgan Moses, I started thinking, there's no way they're going to carry Morgan Moses and Tom Compton.
Correct.
But you have no choice. Right now, barring some enormous. Now, Jay kind of praised Morgan Moses yesterday when I asked about Trent Williams.
Right.
And the reason why I asked that question in that way was, I was watching one-on-one drills yesterday, and I don't know if you remember the exact rush situation, but Brian Arakpo got Trent once.
Right.
The next time, Arakpo tried to go outside to Trent's left shoulder, and Trent walled him off, and then deftly just to his right and cut off the inside path as Arakpo tried to reroute. You can't do that unless you have good feet. One of the big knocks against Morgan Moses is...
Well, his feet. And and even Jay Gruden said, Trent Williams was blessed with those feet. And, but there are ways you can help. And I'll give you an example. Tom Compton is a rookie. I'm not going to make him into anything, but I remember talking to Chris Fisher about this too. I saw some of the same stuff where it's like a guy would take him upfield and he could get back inside him and his feet aren't getting there. I said, is that his feet? He said, no, it's his strength. Because you got to bump that guy a little bit off stride so that way when he curls back inside, that buys you time to move your feet. Now, having said that, I think with Trent Williams as a rookie, sometimes we rely on his arms, but he did show the feet. He always showed the feet. So once you match the technique, you get the footwork. Morgan Moses, my issue with him right now is the technique isn't there. It's so inconsistent. Bending at the waist. When you bend at the waist, you can't move your feet. So you're turning and pushing a guy because he's going outside with your long arms. Then if he shifts back inside, your feet aren't in position to move because of the way your body is aligned or set, or the way your stance is. And that's a big issue with him. So, it's footwork, but it's also connected to how you're bending, and then also it could be some of your strength as well. So it's a lot of things that he's going to have to compensate. He'll never get Trent Williams' footwork, but he can improve with the stance and with the strength.
On Saturday, it was a pick six thrown by Robert Griffin III. On Sunday, it was, we'll tell you that next, as well as some studs and duds that stood out from the weekend of 2 practices, Saturday and Sunday morning, as the Redskins hit the practice fields here in Richmond on training camp today. This is your flagship station for Redskins football. This is ESPN. Have you back with us, 848 ESPN 980. We're live from Richmond on training camp today. Robert Griffin III threw a practice pick six intended for Deshaun Jackson on Saturday. He's facing a blitz. Deshaun Jackson kind of broke off the route. D'Angelo Hall was sitting on the route. Miscommunication between quarterback, wide receiver on what to do in that particular spot. And it obviously didn't end very well. D'Angelo made the easy pick and ran it back. Again, it was in a spot of the field where it wasn't, an 80-yard return for a pick six. Now, earlier in the practice, Deshaun and Robert had hooked up on a couple of long plays, one I think in 7-on-7s, excuse me, and one in teams. But that play specifically stood out, and I know John Keim and I talked, along with other members of the media, to Robert about that, and he kind of compared it to
the Peyton Manning interception in the Super Bowl to Reggie Wayne, where Reggie Wayne kind of breaks off the route and Porter is sitting right there.
Now, was that a fair comparison in your eyes from what you saw? I think so.
I think so. Yeah, and here's the other thing too is D. Hall does a really good job with that when we play that trap.
Yep.
And he has really good instincts for that position. So if you're going to test him there, it's going to be trouble if you're not coming back inside. But the funny thing is, we're talking about that, and it was a legit thing that saw. But this is where it's helpful to go back and watch film of the practice, because after they had done that, we talked to Jay Gruden later in the day, and his assessment was different.
Jordan Reed
was open.
Was the first thing. He kind of got. I asked a weird question, which I'm known for, but he kind of gave us a good answer.
He
said he should have stayed with Jordan Reed because Jordan Reed was open, which certainly, we have a hard time, bang, 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 without the ability to watch film. And Robert didn't mention that specifically when we talked to him afterwards. I guess I bring this up now. He was facing a blitz on that particular play, correct?
It was a fire zone, but then to a cover 2 shell. So, and even when we talked to Robert about it yesterday, because, if you're – one of the things with Griffin last year was some guys, the perception was he's not going to blame himself for things. Okay, fair enough. And there were some times where it was the Philly game where it took a long time to say, I made a bad throw.
Mm-hmm.
So that is stuck in some minds out there. And so so curious to see how Robert answered it yesterday. And then he answered it the right way. It's like, yeah, after watching it, I should have stayed with Jordan. And then yes, Deshaun's got to keep coming inside in his route. That part was legit, but he did say, yes, I have to stick with this route. And, his point was, you see the fire zone, so you see guys dropping to a spot, and you're assuming, the assumption on his part was, Reed's not going to be open because they're dropping there. The reality is, as he said yesterday, is they're dropping the spot. He's going to get there first, get the ball to him. And it's funny because one of the things that with Griffin has been, does he stay too long on his primary read? Well, Gruden was saying he was too impatient on that one.
Right.
So, but again, if Deshaun on that play, so I think there are a couple guys who can learn from that, Griffin and Deshaun.
Maybe he's trying to speed up the clock through his reads.
Yeah.
Which he has to.
Which he has to, but also I think the assumption was they're getting that spot, he's not going to be there.
Right.
So, if Deshaun Jackson keeps coming inside, then you might say, okay, while he made he needs to be more patient, but it still worked because of this. So, but I think it was another learning moment for him. I think we've talked. I mean, he's still a young quarterback. I think that's, I'm not making excuses for him, but it's legit. He's only going into his 3rd year. So I think that's something that you can always learn from, and I think any quarterback can. But so I was curious to see how he handled that, and he handled it the right way, I thought. But, let's see the next time.
I'm going to get more into Robert, the weekend with Robert, coming up next hour. But before you have to leave us, if I asked you for one guy that really stood out just off the top of your head this past weekend, or I guess through the first 4 days of camp, anybody really stand out to you?
A couple guys have jumped out, and it's hard because it's hard to know because sometimes you could have a lineman doing a great job, and we're not going to see it as much because it gets lost, and that's where you go to watch film. I think 2 guys have jumped out, Andre Roberts on offense, and then David Amerson on defense. And what this means for the season, I don't know. I think early in camp they have both looked good. And, Roberts, I think I will say this, the quarterbacks have an awful lot of trust in him.
Yes, and
it's amazing the level of trust they've developed because the trust comes from knowing that this guy is going to be exactly where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. And I think he can run a variety of routes, and he's detailed with them. I mean, he's never been a big-time playmaker, but I think they like what they have in him because of that. And I think some of them feel like he kind of got lost in the shuffle at Arizona a little bit. Well, we'll see. We'll see when the games start. But right now, that's the feeling among the quarterbacks. And then with Amerson, I think he had a really good offseason. I think he's matured a little bit. Again, we'll see. I'm not, what I hate is the guy looks great. He's going to have a great year. Well, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
Let's see it first.
Right.
But he is off to a good start. And I think his focus is better. I think the focus thing for him is a major issue because it wasn't always there last year, whether on the field or off in terms of meetings and all that.
Yes.
So I think if he is able to maintain his focus, and I think this is where a guy like D. Hall has to step up and kind of take him under his wing a little bit and then help him make sure, and Ryan Clark, guys like that. It can't just come from the coaches because if that kid does, he's got a lot of ability, and he's done a good job out here so far.
Real quickly, anybody really disappointing besides the obvious, which was Brandon Jenkins, who was already whacked?
That disappointing.
For a little dud?
Oh, boy. I'd have to go back and check.
There's nobody that really – I mean, outside of maybe Morgan Moses a couple of times, there's really nobody that has looked –
yeah, I mean, Moses is.
Colt McCoy hasn't looked good. Niles Paul had a couple of contested drops over
Yes,
the
he did. But those are guys. When I'm thinking a guy who's going to play a lot.
Yeah.
Morgan Moses is not going to play. He's doing what I thought he would.
Yep.
So I can't say he's disappointing. He's a developing young guy who's going to take a while. That's what he is. So move on.
All right.
But with it's hard to say that because you need to see. I want to see the safeties, especially in games.
Right.
That's where we're going to see something. Pierre Garçon has had a quiet camp. Doesn't mean it's disappointing. It's just I think it's a different reality for him right now. This camp. I don't know how it's going to unfold though. So because he's still going to catch a lot of balls. So, I don't know that there's one guy among the starters yet that jumps out like that.
All right, you got to get out to the sidelines. I'm going to continue. We're going to come back for hour number 2 of training camp today. You will hear my one-on-one interview with David Amerson as well. More about Robert Griffin III's weekend. And you mentioned Pierre Garçon, had a couple of thoughts on him. We will get to all of that coming up in hour number 2 of training camp today. John Keim going out to the practice field sideline right now. I'm staying with you right here on the home of the Redskins, ESPN 980. And indeed, we welcome you back to hour number 2, training camp today on a beautiful Monday morning from Richmond. What a breeze, sunshine, and the players are loving it, man. I was just watching a special teams drill, and by the way, the atmosphere with Ben Kotwika is so completely different. I mean, the players, just seem to buy into everything this dude is doing. I could be wrong. I judge things wrongly a lot. But the energy. I was just watching a one-on-one pursuit drill with live tackling, baby, in the corner of the end zone, right in front of the fans. And, I mean, the players surrounding in a big, large circle. And it was just ball carrier, one-on-one tackler. And could the ball carrier get into the end zone first? And there was some absolute Donnybrooks out there. Gabe Miller, a young linebacker who Jay Gruden signaled out, along with Adrian Robinson, as part of the reason why they let Brandon Jenkins go. Gabe Miller came away with blood all over his chin and his lip. I mean, there was some hooting, some hollering, some contact, some pads a thumping. It was cool to see. And that's something, quite honestly, again, 3rd consecutive day in pads, full uniform. We just didn't see this type of stuff with Mike Shanahan. Now, whether it's good, bad, that ultimately will be judged by the record. But it was sure fun to see. There's been some popping all weekend. A guy like Trenton Robinson has been popping people left and right. I've seen Chris Thompson absorb a blow or two. I've seen Silas Redd thump some people on some downhill runs. You've seen it. You've heard it. It's been fun. You have football back. And that was a really cool drill to watch during the top of the hour break. We welcome you back, training camp today, hour number 2 of 3. Still to come, roughly about an hour from now, one-on-one conversation I had yesterday with Brian Orakpo, playing onto the franchise tag. What's his goal in terms of sacks this year? Will he finally give us a number? We'll ask him that. But John Keim and I ended up last hour talking about studs and duds from the weekend. And I asked him for a stud or two, and he mentioned David Amerson. And listen, it is very clear and obvious to see the improvement, not only in training camp, but back when we were at Redskins Park in Ashburn, of David Emerson. And talked to Raheem Morris the other day, just off on the side, just said the amount of above-the-neck improvement he's made. You hear that term a lot with Robert Griffin III. Jay's mentioned it. Sean McVay has mentioned it. The amount of above-the-neck improvement that David Emerson has made, according to Raheem Morris, is astronomical. And he's playing footloose and fancy-free. And he's got the wiry, long frame. He's physical. He's tough. I've only seen him get beat once so far in camp. And that was by Deshaun Jackson on a long bomb yesterday in one-on-ones, which is designed to help the wide receiver. So on Saturday afternoon, I had a chance to walk up with David Emerson and get his thoughts on all of this and much more. His maturation, his progress, where he is in his own eyes. Can he be the best cornerback on this team before season's end? My interview with David Emerson, Redskins' second-year corner, and finally a starter, here on ESPN 980. We all see the improvement. How much improvement do you feel and how much more confidence do you have?
Man, I feel great. Like I said, with this being my second year, man, I think it's, in my head mentally, I can feel the difference. Just feeling comfortable within the defense. My technique is a lot more fundamental. And, like I said, I just feel good about it.
Talking to Raheem just a couple of minutes ago, he said it's all, above the neck. And, he feels that's where you've made the biggest improvement. They knew what they had in you physically. It's just a matter of getting that part of it. Is that what you agree with?
Yeah, definitely. Just coming in, focusing every play, staying locked in, whether it's my eyes being in the right place or, whether it be run fits and coverage or whatever. Coming from, in coverage or whatever. But like I said, he's exactly right. It's all above the head, man. And once I kind of realized that, I really start to lock in and stuff, whether it be in the meeting rooms or just me watching film on my own, so it's definitely been a help.
From a physical perspective, clearly you have the body, the frame, the hands, and the strength to kind of play that man press coverage and to jam receivers. What is the potential downside, and how much do you have to be locked in so that you don't get blown past immediately on a takeoff?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you just got to know the situation. I know if a guy's within arm length of me, I can get my hands on him right now. That's really what I'm shooting for, and that kind of kills everything, makes me control the route. But, if he's, arm distance away from me, just staying patient and, kind of staying square until he makes me go one way or the other, or not to be too fast on things. It's all, like I said, it's all right here. As long as you just, as long as I lock in and, just play my technique, I think it's going to be hard for any receiver just to deal with me and press coverage.
Jay said in his press conference earlier today that he feels you could be one of the best cornerbacks in the National Football League. Raheem certainly kind of, backed up that sentiment. Do you think about that stuff? Does it motivate you, or do you allow yourself not even to go there?
Yeah, it's definitely just motivation. With the head guy and, the guy that's with me every day, Raheem, for me to say some stuff like that, it definitely makes me want to go ahead and work hard, put in the time, like I said, in the film room, in the weight room, and as well as on the field, just to, stay focused and, just play my game. Go out there and compete and do everything 100%, go full throttle, and, the outcome be what the outcome is, so you got to live with that.
Obviously, every defense is versatile. You man press, zone, off man, what have you. How much more Seattle Seahawks-esque man press, in your grill, physical defense are you guys going to be, say, just from last year? Because I know obviously has wanted to do more of that, but
right. Yeah, because I know me coming in here last year, barely playing any press coverage at all, it was a big adjustment for me, and I think I then got better and better as more and more I've been here. And so I definitely feel like we're in a position, to do that right now if we wanted to. You got D'Angelo Hall, who's pretty much the master at anything you ask him to play. So, it's just a matter of fact of me just locking down and, being able to do whatever so they can feel freely to call whatever coverage they want and know that we're just effective at or even with any other coverage we have in the playbook.
Does it give you any more confidence? The last thing, we'll let you go. I mean, last year, obviously, you were working in more of the nickel package, and, you come in and you'd be in the same position, but you're not getting as many snaps because Josh was there in the base. Now that you know that you're the starting right corner and you're going to play nickel and you're going to play base, does that, I guess, give you a little more confidence, or is that oh man, I don't know how my body's going to hold up for that many snaps? How do you kind of go through that thought process?
Oh, no, man. I'm like a pit bull ready to get after it, man. Like I said, just the more and more opportunities I have to go out there and make plays, and like just being out there on the field. And I mean, I'm ready for it, And like I said, I ain't come here to, just, sit on the bench or come in and nickel packages. I wanted to come here and be a big contributor to the defense, be a guy they look for, they can count on, depend on, and that's what I'm working for, So right now I have my opportunity this year, and I got to take advantage of it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Good to see you. All right, David Amerson calls himself a pit bull. A pit bull. I like that kind of analogy. There's probably no player individually that has stood out and impressed and improved the most other than David Amerson. Hard to find another player that has. And, I don't want to get too crazy with this whole, he can be the best corner, one of the best corners in the NFL, he can be one of the best corner on the Redskins. Let's pump the brake. Let John mention it. Let's see him do it first. But he had a tremendous coverage job yesterday on Deshaun Jackson that I saw back on tape from NBC4. They were showing it to me because they had a great angle. I mean, fluid. Didn't even jam him. Let him have an outside release. Stuck with him on his hip. Allowed him no space. And the throw was inaccurate to the sideline, but Deshaun Jackson wasn't catching that. And then yesterday, from Robert Griffin III, in front of Deshaun Jackson, he jumped an out route to the sideline, on the other sideline, and almost had a pick six, knocked it down. I couldn't tell whether he dropped it or knocked it down. The point is served. David Amerson, all indications, and every coach, all indications, absolutely for real. And that's a huge thing for the Washington Redskins. Larry Michael will join us just after the 9:30 bottom of the hour DC Sports Center. But coming up next, a great sign so far for the Redskins. However, a bad trend continues for the NFL right now. That's next. All righty, we welcome you back to the Bon Secours Washington Redskins Training Center here in Richmond on a beautiful Monday morning. Still nice and breezy. Sun is shining. Hard to beat this weather. Hard to beat this weather. No doubt. Boys are out on the practice field, and we are with you here on ESPN 980 overlooking the practice fields here at this facility, second year in place. The crowds have been, they've been down. I mean, no other way around it. But I would tell you, the last 3 days have been entertaining. There's no doubt about it. You put the big boy pads on, and away you go. As we look out now, Jason Hatcher is working with head strength and conditioning coach Ray Wright, and kind of loosening up and trying to get back to where he needs to be before they clear him. Leonard Hankerson is working as well on the side here, right in front of us, trying to catch some balls. So guys obviously getting ready, getting loose, and trying to do their thing. One of the things that always happens here at training camp is injuries. And so far, the Redskins came in with a couple of injuries. As we just mentioned, the guys like Jason Hatcher, Leonard Hankerson. We talked about Maurice Hurt, and that was a weird deal. Stephen Bowen obviously still going through his thing, but that's it. Evan Royster has been out there, but he hadn't done anything the last 3 days with a slight hamstring pull. That's it. That's it. Now listen, knock on wood, they'll be able to escape here without major injury. That has never been the case. It wasn't the case last year when they lost Keenan Robinson on day one of camp, before training camp was even an hour old. But it is a great, great, great sign, again, knock on a wood table here, that the Redskins have made it through now to day 5. Day 5. With no injury of significant note. None. However, that is not the case for the rest of the National Football League. Not the case in any way, shape, or form. LaMichael James, San Francisco, dislocated elbow. Vic Ballard, Indianapolis Colts, torn ACL, done for the year. LaMichael James will miss some time. Don't know how much of training camp he'll miss. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. At least how that affects him during the regular season, I don't know. But Kendall Hunter, also in the same backfield for the San Francisco 49ers, done for the year. Tyler Gaffney, youngster out of Stanford, Carolina Panthers. Now, again, they're pretty deep at running back, so maybe not a huge, huge loss, but done for the year. All contending teams, all running backs, I just named you. San Francisco 2 times, Indy, Carolina. Oh, by the way, San Francisco and Indianapolis, both on the Redskins schedule. Evan Royster, as I mentioned, has the slight hamstring pull. And then there's a guy who I would love to see an opportunity for. And while the Redskins are very lucky so far, one person's or one team's misfortune is another man's blessing or potential opportunity. Tim Hightower was here on Saturday. You may remember Tim. Played for the Redskins, of course, in 2010 and 2011. I should say 2011. 2011. And Tim is one of the best guys that I've been, had the opportunity to cover. Just a really good dude. And he hasn't been able to come back fully from that torn ACL in Carolina, October of 2011. He had an infection that was part of the reason why he was not able to fully overcome the ACL. Doctors found it in his left knee. However, he's been cleared as of a couple of months ago. I know Tim had some opportunities potentially in New York last year. And the Redskins have obviously stayed in touch. They're very much on his mind. Listen, he'd love to be here. Don't think the opportunity is here. We were mentioning Evan Royster as, being banged up. He's running right in front of me right now. Looks like he's going pretty close to full speed. But, again, one team's benefit and one team's fortune is another team's misfortune, but one individual's misfortune is another individual's fortune, and this could be a perfect opportunity for Tim Hightower to get the opportunity that he's been quite honestly aching for. He became a new dad 3 months ago. I met his little baby son the other day. I know John Kahn talked to him as well, and he put up a story with some quotes from Tim that you can read on ESPN.com. But you look around the NFL, and again, winning sometimes is a direct result of how healthy you are. Not all the time. Teams get through injuries a lot. The Giants won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with a lot of injuries in training camp. A lot. The New England Patriots got to the Super Bowl. Got to the AFC Championship game. And I still think would have beaten the Denver Broncos if they were healthy. With Vince Wilfork, if they didn't lose Aqib Talib, so on and so forth. You could still get to where you need to be or want to be with significant injuries. Just makes it a lot harder. Here's hoping the Redskins stay healthy, but here's also hoping that Tim Hightower gets the benefit from someone else's misfortune. And maybe, we'll see Tim Hightower on the field. Maybe he'll be going against the Redskins this year. 926 ESPN 980. The voice of the Redskins, Larry Michaels, straight ahead. We'll get his thoughts. Who has impressed him the most, and what does he think of year 2? You're at the Bon Secours Washington Redskin Training Center again on a beautiful Monday. We are live. I'm with you until 11 o'clock on Training Camp Today. Still to come, Brian Arakpo in the next hour, plus hopefully a guest right off the field as practice ends. That's all still to come here on your flagship station for Redskins football. This is ESPN 980. All right, we welcome you back, 9:34. Nice to have you aboard with us on a beautiful Monday morning from the Bon Secours Washington Redskin Training Center down here in the capital of the Commonwealth. I mean, just, again, can't say it enough, splendid weather. Splendid weather.
Splendid.
And the splendid voice of the Washington Redskins, Mr. Larry Michaels, here with us, live and in living color. How are you, Sir Michael?
I am just fantastic. Is it game time yet? No, not quite. Not August 7th.
No,
not yet.
Wait,
but
you got to wait a week and a half.
I'm just raring to go. You're right. You couldn't describe it any better than splendid. My gosh, this is just ridiculous. And it's too bad there's no practice tomorrow because the weather here is supposed to be even better. But it's okay. We could use a little bit of a break.
A little bit of a day break.
And let me tell you, I know you've been here in your beautifully appointed booth here with the air condition, the best air conditioner around, by the way. Is it Kraut Metcalf? Is it Kraut Metcalf? Yes,
sure
it is. Of course it is, because it feels so good. But I've been out first couple days here, Russell. You know, you got to get your feet on the ground and just getting. I've been actually concentrating on practice the last 3 days,
right?
And it's very apparent to me the pace of these practices. It's not just a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. It's much faster. Mm-hmm. It's much more efficient than the previous coaching regime, and just to see so much happening at one time and the constant attention to special teams, it's answered some questions in my book already. You know, what is the approach this year to try to make those special teams better? And it's work, 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 work. And you're going to see a lot of first-team players play special teams this year for the Redskins that you did not see last year. And the common opinion that, the backups better be playing special teams. You know what? Some of the starters better be playing special teams because that's a main concentration. Thank you so much. That's a main concentration. Water is good out here right now. It's the main concentration, and, of course, to see some of the battles that are brewing. And I just be able to concentrate on the wide receivers, Russell, and to see it's more than just the guys you think.
No doubt.
There's a couple players there that are just popping out.
We're gonna get back to that in a second, but I want to follow up with what you said on special teams. They start every morning with special teams drills. That kind of gets everybody's juices flowing a little bit. I love Ben Kawika, so let me just say I'm in the bag already for
Man
Ben
crush.
Kawika.
I understand.
Okay, so let me just say that. Second, I was watching this morning. I mean, they're going after it.
Yeah.
And the players are all around in a big circle, and these one-on-one, and it is who wants it bad and who wants it more. Third day in pads,
You know what's happening here today?
Pants.
You know what's happening here today?
Besides a very physical practice?
It's full go. There's going to be portions of the practice which we have not seen in how long, Chris Russell? How long have we not seen, even during the season, for 4 years at least? I mean, I try to wipe out the previous 2 years, but I don't think they ever went full go then either. You got to go back to Joe Gibbs, his second tour of duty, to remember the last time they're going to put the full pads on and go full go. And you're going to see that today, which obviously tackling is what the concentration is.
Yes.
You're not, for the offense, no one wants to get hurt. And I don't think it's going to be many periods of full go. I think it's going to be selective.
Right, exactly. And that has been a problem, the missed tackles, over the years for the defense and on special teams. I mean, listen, special teams and I should say the defensive problems and the special teams problems weren't because players didn't care. Maybe they didn't want it bad enough, but part of tackling is, and part of special teams, and quite honestly, part of defense is, yes, hustle, but the willingness to go that extra mile to bring down the next guy, to get more hats to the ball. It takes that little extra something in you, that little extra to get it, and I think Jay Gruden is trying to get that. So continuing along on that trend, besides that, what are some of the other issues or some of the other changes that you think you've been able to observe with this new coaching staff, which there is some holdover, but new head coach, some new assistant coaches under Jay Gruden?
Well, I think the one thing, going back to the special teams again, I was watching this morning's special teams practice start, and you had Raheem Morris doing a drill with the football with Ben Kowika watching, and that was unheard of in previous years. Here you've got the DB's coach participating in the special teams drills, and you see it all over the field. Kirk Olivadotti, Brian Baker, running backs coach Randy Jordan, they all have something they can teach that's relative to special teams. And haven't seen that before. And there's a lack of ego on this coaching staff. I think these guys know each other so well. And you look at the connection between Gruden, Raheem, and Jim Haslett, and there's no ego. And one thing that Jay Gruden said yesterday, or it was yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, so many press conferences, that his approach is to let his coaches coach.
Yes.
And he said it, I don't forget who asked him, and it's very apparent. So, the pace, the coaching staff, to me, is the most improved unit on the team.
Okay. It's remarkable how they stand out because, I've been doing this now this is year number 6. You've been here longer, and I wasn't here during Joe Gibbs Part 2, okay? But I see them doing unique drills, different ways to attack certain weaknesses. I meant medicine. I talk about medicine balls all the time with Randy Jordan working on.
There's a tether ball in the goalpost. Did you see that?
Yeah,
for blocking punts.
Brian Baker with the big boxing mitts to help Brian Arakpo and the other edge rushers. This coaching staff, I don't know how it will ultimately turn out, and ultimately you're only judged by that. But unbelievable the kind of difference, and this isn't an insult to what happened before. It's just a different approach and a more lively approach.
Let me give you some color commentary to what you're saying. Just moments ago, on the far 10-yard line, they were doing passing drills, the wide receivers, tight ends, fades, back shoulder fades to the pylon, and post routes. And Jay Gruden was covering the wide receiver on the right side, pushing him, jamming him, and he goes through about 10 reps. And he's just about expired. He's the man out there yelling, I need water, I need water. It's the head coach who's out there.
Shadowing, yeah.
And he is putting a lot of effort into it. That's got to draw him close to his players. It's got to draw him better. They've got to look at him and say, this guy's just not a figurehead. I mean, he's getting the best workout of anybody out here. Just something to consider when you say, first-year head coach, what's his approach? I mean, it's more than hands-on. I mean, he's playing defensive back. I said, great defense, coach, because he's the guy back there. Ike Hilliard, the wide receiving coach, is on the other side doing the same thing.
How do you think Robert looks in your eyes?
I think Robert looks a little bit better every day. I think that he did, almost like he had a little rust the first day. It was a rainy day, and he got off to a bad start. I think his every time he misses a pass, he just scolds himself, and so he's looking for that perfect practice. And I think he looks remarkable. He looks like a well-trained athlete ready to go, and to ever think that he might have had that knee injury, to think the difference between last year and this year and watching him, I do think that they continue to have to work on chemistry, continue to work on those little details. I talked about those fades, and Jay Gruden said he wanted that back shoulder even further back, make the man turn his hips and take it right to the pylon with the ball. Robert let one fly too high, and he upset himself because he didn't put one on the money. So it's like a pitcher. Every pitch counts for him. And I think he does take it very seriously. And you know what? Today is a padded practice, so you really want to say they put the pads on. Well, they haven't done it until today, not full pads. So they always talk about that. Oh, wait till they put the pads on. No one, to me, looks any different with the pads on than with the shells on so far to me. You do have a guy's lingering injuries for Stephen Bowen. You see that Doug Worthington isn't practicing today. You know the Redskins picked up another defensive lineman, and they released the linebacker yesterday. And a lot of people felt that release of Brandon Jenkins was strictly a lack of effort release. I'm not so sure about that. He had not shown well during the OTAs. He'd kind of fallen down the depth chart a little bit. And do it early, replace him, get somebody else in. And, in fact, because of some of those injuries on the D-line, you might have needed that another body, Everett Brown. I don't think he's going to be a long-time solution to anything, but you need bodies. I'm already counting up the position numbers, Russell. I hate to tell you this, but I've already started looking at how many linemen, how many wide receivers.
In your laboratory,
trying to go 25, 25, and 3 if they actually do that. And so, to me, some of the swing positions, the offensive line, the wide receiver position, and do you carry a third quarterback? I got a feeling they're going to carry a third quarterback because you never know what's going to happen along the way. And if they do carry the third quarterback, that means you're going to have 6 wide receivers. I can't see. You got a guy like Morgan Moses. This is where it gets a little complicated to us Redskins geeks, Morgan Moses might not be ready to play.
Yeah,
but
you got to carry Tom Compton and Morgan Moses.
That's exactly right. So that probably will cause an addition of one man to the offensive line, one less wide receiver. Defense, inside linebacker, going to be some tough cuts. Line is going to be some very tough cuts. Tough cuts. You're looking at a guy like Gathers, Golston, Neild, and I was saying Worthington. He's not. I thought maybe there'd be two positions for those four.
I agree. We could play the numbers game, and obviously we get a better idea over preseason games. Before I let you go, one last thing for you. Year 2 of this facility, how do you think the changes that the Redskins and the city of Richmond have made, and ultimately the experience now in year 2 versus year 1?
Well, the facility looks a year better. I mean, they've done some different changes. They've made some topography changes. They put this gravel road in. It makes it a lot easier. We've had rain, and you're still wearing clean shoes, Russell. You haven't destroyed a pair of shoes yet.
I change them every day.
So last year, everybody ruined a couple pair of shoes. So that's made a big difference. The grass certainly has grown up. It's matured. I think the morning practice makes it a long day for fans. I think it really does. Last year, I was talking to Charlie as we were driving over. I said, why does it seem like these days are so much longer? He says, because they are. Practice is a couple hours earlier. In the afternoon practice, you got a 6-hour gap. So hopefully that translates into some good business for the Richmond economy as people have to kill a little time between practices. And we've got the off day tomorrow. Then we've got a big weekend coming up, the 2nd and 3rd, the Fit Fest downtown. Off weekend, really, for the players, and there's no turning back then.
You ready to call a game on Thursday night?
Absolutely.
Next Thursday night, I should say.
Sonny and Cooley and Doc, and everybody's going to be ready. It should be an exciting year. First-time head coach. You don't know what to expect, but the vibe's pretty good right now.
Back at FedEx Field for the New England Patriots after an exciting kind of build-up with the Patriots here in Richmond. The voice of the Redskins, Larry Michael, with us here on ESPN 980.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much, as
Thank
always.
you, my friend. Look at Pat Malley. Does he have to wear a tie on such hot days like this?
He is stylish if he's nothing else. If he's nothing else.
If he's nothing else. Is that a backhanded? What is it? If he's nothing else, he's stylish. He just said you're nothing else. Good thing you got the tie on. Huh?
Peter King was here on Friday. He's wrote about the Redskins in the Monday Morning Quarterback column that he normally puts out. Plus, he had some very interesting comments, good and eyebrow-raising, about Bruce Allen, Jay Gruden, and Robert Griffin III to me on Friday when he was here. We'll tell you all that Peter King had to say and then get your thoughts. Coming up on ESPN 980. All righty, we welcome you back. 9:50, ESPN 980. Coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. Boy, I shouldn't have peanuts during the commercial break. A couple of peanuts in shell. Getting the best of me. In more ways than one. As we approach the end of hour number 2 here on training camp today, the Redskins still out on the practice field. Again, as we told you, 3rd consecutive day of fully padded practices. Everett Brown is in the fold. Redskins signing him this morning. As Larry and I were talking about, Doug Worthington a little bit banged up. Of course, Jason Hatcher still not back yet. Stephen Bowen not back yet, and probably not back anytime soon. Hatcher looks like he's running pretty well right in front of us. Who knows? Maybe an opportunity for somebody else will open up sooner than later, and I very much hope that that is the case. I'll just leave it at that. But an opportunity came aboard for me on Friday to talk to Peter King, who was here. And, Peter has been outspoken on the MMQB site about not using the name Redskins. No, he's not a hater. It's just, look, people feel differently about what I would consider to be a political issue, I guess. And had an opportunity to talk to Peter about a number of different things. I thought the really good stuff that he said was about Jay Gruden. He said, quote, I thought that Bruce Allen made the right hire. Okay. But this is where it got interesting. I thought he hired the right Gruden. And that was interesting because a lot of us thought if Bruce was going to go down that well, that he would want the established veteran head coach who he's already directly worked with as a head coach, as an executive, with the Raiders, then with Tampa, in Brother John. Saying, quote, I thought he hired the right Gruden. And basically that wasn't a shot at John. It was just saying, hey, Jay is on his way up. He's done everything. He wants desperately to be a first-time head coach. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He hasn't won a Super Bowl as a head coach yet, obviously, or even as a coordinator. A couple other quick things he said. Quote, the reason Robert Griffin III is going to be like working with Jay Gruden, I think, is because Jay runs a fairly democratic ship. He, meaning Griffin, is going to feel like he has a little more ownership in the scheme, meaning more input, more involvement, more, hey, Jay, this is what I'm seeing. Sean, this is what I'm seeing. Why don't we do this? Why don't we throw screens more on first down? Trust me, Robert Griffin III wants to throw screens. And oh, by the way, forgot to mention this. Did get confirmation just a couple of minutes ago. Practice, when it ends, Griffin is scheduled to join us, according to the Redskins. So look forward to that. Less than an hour, hopefully, from right now. The other thing Peter King had to say was that the entire team and coaching staff is working in concert with each other. Again, for more ownership in the schemes, for more involvement in what they're doing. He said the defense knows that Jim Haslett runs a smart scheme, a very aggressive pouncing defense. He loved Ryan Clark, the signing, the drafting of Trent Murphy. He talked with me about Mike Shanahan. I wrote a big story about this up on ESPN980.com. But then Bruce Allen came back up again when I asked about the Redskins name controversy. And we're going to take a timeout here at the top of the hour. We're going to come back, and we're going to let you hear it. What exactly Peter King said to me about Bruce Allen and the ongoing Redskins name controversy. And then we're going to ask you to weigh in at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Wait till you hear what Peter had to say about Bruce Allen and the Redskins name controversy. Hour number 3, straight ahead, live in Richmond, training camp today, on your flagship station for Washington Redskins football. This is ESPN 980.